Slips of Speech by John H. Bechtel. Introduction. Read for the LibriVox Language Learning Collection, Volume 2. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Introduction. Homer, in all probability, knew no rules of rhetoric, and was not tortured with the consideration of grammatical construction, and yet his verse will endure through time. If everybody possessed the genius of Homer, rules and cautions in writing would be unnecessary. Today all men speak, and most men write, but it's observed that those who most closely follow Homer's method of writing without rules are most unlike Homer in the results. The ancient bard was a law unto himself. We need rules for our guidance. Rules of writing are the outgrowth of the study of the characteristics and qualities of style, which distinguish the best writers from those of inferior skill and ability. Grammarians and rhetoricians, according to their several lines of investigation, set forth the laws and principles governing speech, and formulate rules whereby we may follow the true and avoid the false. Grammar and rhetoric, as too often presented in the schools, are such uninviting studies that when school days are ended the books are laid aside, and are rarely consulted afterward. The custom of formally burning the textbooks after the final examinations, a custom that prevails in some institutions, is but an emphatic method of showing how the students regard the subjects treated in the books. If all the rules and principles had been thoroughly mastered, the huge bonfire of textbooks in grammar and rhetoric might be regarded a fitting celebration of the student's victory over the difficulties of English undefiled. But too often these rules are merely memorized by the student for the purpose of recitation, and are not engrafted upon his everyday habit of speech. They are, therefore, soon forgotten, and the principles involved are subject to daily violation. Hence arises the need of books like Slips of Speech, in which the common faults of speakers and writers are pointed out, and the correct use of words shown. Brief and informal in treatment, they will be read and consulted when the more voluminous textbooks will be left untouched. The copious index appended to this volume will afford a ready reference to the many subjects discussed, and will contribute greatly to the convenience and permanent value of the book. End of Introduction to Slips of Speech by John H. Bechtel, read by Mike Harris. Slips of Speech by John H. Bechtel, Chapter 1, read for the LibriVox Language Learning Collection, Volume 2. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Slips of Speech, Chapter 1, Taste. Taste is a universal gift. It's been found in some degree in all nations, races, and ages. It's shown by the savage in his love of personal decoration, by the civilized man in his love of art. But while it's thus universal, it's as different among men as their faces, complexions, characters, or languages. Even among people of the same nation, it's as different as the degrees of society. The same individual at different periods of life shows this variableness of taste. These diversities of taste imply a susceptibility to improvement. Good taste in writing forms no exception to the rule. While it seems to require some basis in nature, no degree of inborn aptitude will compensate for the lack of careful training. To give his natural taste firmness and fineness, a writer needs to read the best literature, not merely so as to know it, but so as to feel the beauty, the fitness, the charm, the strength, the delicacy of a well-chosen word. The study of the proper arrangement and the most effective expression of our thoughts prompts us to think more accurately. So close is the connection between the thought and its expression that looseness of style in speaking and writing may nearly always be traced to indistinctness and feebleness in the grasp of the subject. No degree of polish in expression will compensate for inadequacy of knowledge, but with the fullest information upon any subject there is still room for the highest exercise of judgment and good sense in the proper choice and arrangement of the thoughts and of the words with which to express them. The concurrent testimony of those best qualified to render a decision has determined that authors reflect the finest literary taste, and these writers should be carefully studied by all who aspire to elegance, accuracy, and strength in literary expression. Fine writing. Never hesitate to call a spade a spade. One of the most frequent violations of good taste consists in the effort to dress a common subject in high-sounding language. The ass in the fable showed his stupidity when he put on the lion's skin and expected the other animals to declare him to be the king of the beasts. The distinction of a subject lies in its own inherent character, and no pompous parade of words will serve to exalt a commonplace theme. Poetic terms. In the expression of homely ideas and the discussion of affairs of everyday life, avoid such poetic forms as o'er for over, ne'er for never, mid for amid, e'en for even, agan for began, twixt for betwixt, neath for beneath, list for listen, oft for often, morn for morning, eve for evening, ere for ever, ear for before, 'tis for it is, 'twas for it was. In all prose composition avoid such poetic forms as swain, white, mead, break, dingle, dell, zephyr. Foreign words. The unrestrained use of foreign words, whether from the ancient or from the modern languages, savors of pedantry and affectation. The ripest scholars, in speaking and writing English, make least use of foreign words or phrases. Persons who indulge in their use incur the risk of being charged with a desire to exhibit their linguistic attainments. On the other hand, occasions do arise when the use of words from a foreign tongue by one who is thoroughly familiar with them will add both grace and exactness to his style. Rarely use a foreign term when your meaning can be as well expressed in English. Instead of blasé, use surfeited or wearied. For cortège, use procession. For couleur de rose, rose color. For déjeuner, breakfast. For employé, employee. For en route, on the way. For entre nous, between ourselves. For fait accompli, an accomplished fact. For in toto, wholly or entirely. For penchant, inclination. For raison d'être, reason for existence. For recherche, choice, refined. For rôle, part. For soirée dansante, an evening dancing party. For sub rosa, secretly, etc. The following incident from the Detroit Free Press is in point. The gentleman from the West pulled his chair up to the hotel table, tucked his napkin under his chin, picked up the bill of fare, and began to study it intently. Everything was in restaurant French, and he didn't like it. "Here, waiter," he said sternly, "there's nothing on this I want." "Ain't there nothing else you'd like for dinner, sir?" inquired the waiter politely. "Have you got any sine qua non?" the waiter gasped. "No, sir," he replied. "Got any bon mots?" "No, sir." "Got any semper idem?" "Why, no, sir, we ain't." "Got any jus d'esprit?" "No, sir, not a one." "Got any tempus fugit?" "Why, I reckon not, sir." "Got any soirée dansante?" "No, sir." The waiter was edging off. "Got any sine die?" "Oh, no, we ain't, sir." "Got any e pluribus unum?" The waiter's face showed some sign of intelligence. "Oh, seems like I heard of dat, sah," and he rushed out to the kitchen, only to return empty handed. "We ain't got none, sah," he said in a tone of disappointment. "Got any mal de mer?" "What, no, sir." The waiter was going to pieces fast. The gentleman from the west was as serene as a May morning. "Got any vice versa?" he inquired again. The waiter could only shake his head. "No? Well, maybe you got some bacon and cabbage and a corn dodger." "Oh, 'deed we have, sir," exclaimed the waiter in a tone of the utmost relief, and he fairly flew out to the kitchen. Trite expressions. Words and phrases which may once have been striking and effective, or witty and felicitous, but which have become worn out by oft repeated use, should be avoided. The following hackneyed phrases will serve to illustrate: the staff of life, gave up the ship, counterfeit presentment, the hymeneal altar, bold as a lion, throw cold water upon, the rose upon the cheek, lords of creation, the weaker sex, the better half, the rising generation, tripping the light fantastic toe, the cup that cheers but does not inebriate, in the arms of Morpheus, the debt of nature, the bourne whence no traveller returns, to shuffle off this mortal coil, the devouring element, a brow of alabaster. Pet words. Avoid pet words, whether individual, provincial, or national in their use. Few persons are entirely free from the overuse of certain words. Young people largely employ such words as delightful, delicious, exquisite, and other expressive adjectives, which constitute a kind of society slang. Overworked expressions. Words and phrases are often taken up by writers and speakers, repeated, and again taken up by others, and thus their use enlarges in ever widening circles until the expressions become threadbare. Drop them before they have reached that state. Function, environment, trend, the masses, to be in touch with, to voice the sentiments of, these are enough to illustrate the kind of words referred to. Very vulgar vulgarisms. No one who has any regard for purity of diction and the proprieties of cultivated society will be guilty of the use of such expressions as yaller for yellow, feller for fellow, kittle for kettle, kiver for cover, ingons for onions, cowcumbers for cucumbers, sparagrass for asparagus, yarbs for herbs, taters for potatoes, tomates for tomatoes or tomatoes, bile for boil, hain't for ain't or isn't, het for heated, caned for needed, sot for sat or set, teeny for tiny, fooling you for deceiving you, them for those, shut up for be quiet or be still, or cease speaking, went back on me for deceiving me or took advantage of me, a power of people for a great many people, a power of money for great wealth, a heap of houses for many houses, lots of books for many books, lots of corn for much corn, or large quantities of corn, gents for gentlemen, and many others of a similar character. End of Slips of Speech, Chapter 1, by John H. Bechtel, read by Mike Harris. Slips of Speech, by John H. Bechtel, Chapter 2, Part 1, read for the LibriVox Language Learning Collection, Volume 2. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Chapter 2, Choice of Words. Our American writers evince much variety in their graces of diction, but in the accurate choice of words, James Russell Lowell and William Cullen Bryant stand out conspicuous above the rest. So careful and persistent was the latter that during the time that he was editor of the Evening Post of New York City, he required the various writers upon that paper to avoid the use of a long list of words and expressions which he had prepared for them, and which were commonly employed by other papers. This list was not only used, but enlarged by his successors. Strive to cultivate the habit of observing words. Trace their delicate shades of meaning as employed by the most polished writers. Note their suggestiveness, Mark the accuracy with which they are chosen. In this way your mind will be kept on the alert to discover the beauties as well as the blemishes of all the thought pictures that are presented, and your vocabulary will be greatly enlarged and enriched. Here's Brian's list of objectionable expressions. Above and over, use more than. Artiste, use artist. Aspirant, authoress. Beat, use defeat. Bagging, use capturing. Balance, use remainder. Banquet, use dinner or supper. Bogus. Casket, use coffin. Claimed, use asserted. Collided. Commence, use begin. Compete. Cortege, use procession. Contemporary, use contemporary. Couple, use two. Darky, use negro. Day before yesterday, use the day before yesterday. Debut, decease as a verb. Democracy applied to a political party. Develop, use expose. Devouring element, use fire. Donate, employ. Enacted, use acted. Endorse, use approve. En route, esquire. Graduate, use is graduated. Gents, use gentleman. On, HON, period. House, use House of Representatives. Humbug. Inaugurate, use begin. In our midst. Item, use particle, extract, or paragraph. Is being done, and all similar passive forms. Jeopardize. Jubilant, use rejoicing. Juvenile, use boy. Lady, use wife. Last, use latest. Lengthy, use long. Leniency, use lenity. Loafer. Loan or loaned, use lend or lent. Located. Majority, use most. Mrs. President, Mrs. Governor, Mrs. General. Mutual, use common. Official, use officer. Ovation. On yesterday. Over his signature. Pants, use pantaloons. Parties, use persons. Partially, use partly. Past 2 weeks, use last 2 weeks. Poetess. Portion, use part. Posted, use informed. Progress, use advance. Quite, when prefixed to good, large, etc. Raid, use attack. Realized, use obtained. Reliable, use trustworthy. Rendition, use performance. Repudiate, use reject or disown. Retire as an active verb. Very reverend, use the reverend. Roll, use part. Roughs, rowdies. Secesh. Sensation, use noteworthy event. Standpoint, use point of view. Start, in the sense of setting out. State, use say. Taboo. Talent, use talents or ability. Talented. Tapis, the deceased. War, use dispute or disagreement. Stilts. Avoid bombastic language. Work for plain expressions rather than for the unusual. Use the simplest words that the subject will bear. The following clipping, giving an account of the commencement exercises of a noted female college, strikingly illustrates what to avoid. Like some beacon light upon a rock-bound coast, against which the surges of the ocean unceasingly roll, and casting its beams far across the waters, warning the mariner for the danger near, the college, like a Gibraltar, stands upon the high plains of learning, shedding its rays of knowledge from the murmurings of the Atlantic to the whirlwinds of the Pacific, guiding womankind from the dark valley of ignorance, and wooing her with wisdom's lore, leads creation's fairest, purest, best into flowery dells, where she can pluck the richest food of knowledge, and crowns her brow with a coronet of gems whose brilliancy can never grow dim, for they glisten with the purest thought, that seems as a spark struck from the mind of Deity. There is no need for the daughters of this community to seek colleges of distant climes whereat to be educated. For right here in their own city, God's paradise on earth, is situated a noble college, the bright diadem of that paradise, that has done more for the higher education of woman than any institution in our land. Purity. An author's diction is pure when he uses such words only as belong to the idiom of the language. The only standard of purity is the practice of the best writers and speakers. A violation of purity is called a barbarism. Unlike the Latin, Greek, or Hebrew, the English is a living language, and, like all living organisms, manifests its life by taking in new material and casting off old waste continually. Science, art, and philosophy give rise to new ideas, which, in turn, demand new words for their expression. Of these, some gain a permanent foothold, while others float a while upon the currents of conversation and newspaper literature, and then disappear. Good usage is the only real authority in the choice of reputable words, and to determine in every case what good usage dictates is not an easy matter. Authors, like words, must be tested by time before their forms of expression may become a law for others. Pope, in his essay on criticism, laid down a rule which, for point and brevity, has never been excelled. In words as fashions the same rule will hold, alike fantastic, if too new or old. Be not the first by whom the new are tried, nor yet the last to lay the old aside. Barbarisms. Campbell, in his Philosophy of Rhetoric, says that a word to be legitimate must have these three signs of authority. It must be reputable, or that of educated people, as opposed to that of the ignorant or vulgar. It must be national, as opposed to what is either local or technical. It must be present, as opposed to what is obsolete. Any word that does not have these three qualities may, in general, be styled a barbarism. Anglicized words. Many foreign words, in process of time, become so thoroughly domesticated that their translation or the use of an awkward equivalent would be a greater mark of pedantry than the use of the foreign word itself. The proper use of such terms as fiat, palladium, cabal, quorum, omnibus, antique, artiste, coquette, ennui, physique, regime, tableau, amateur, cannot be censored on the ground of their foreign character. Obsolete words. Some writers affect an antiquated style by the introduction of such words as peradventure, perchance, anon, behest, quoth, erewhile. The use of such words gives a strange sound to the sentence, and generally indicates that the writer is not thoroughly in earnest. The expression is lowered in tone, and is made to sound fantastic. New words. A word should not be condemned because it's new. If it's really needed, it will be welcomed and soon find a permanent place. Shakespeare, Addison, and Johnson introduced many new words to which their names afterward gave a sanction. Carlyle, Coleridge, Tennyson, and Browning have introduced or given currency to new words, and made strange ones familiar. New words are objectionable when they are employed without proper authority. The chief sources of supply of the objectionable kind are the current slang of the street and the sensational newspaper. They are often the result of a desire to say things in such a manner as to reflect smartness upon the speaker, or to present things in a humorous or picturesque way. That they are frequently very effective cannot be gainsaid. Sometimes they are coined in the heat of a political or social discussion, and, for a time, express what everybody is talking about, but it's impossible to tell whether they will live beyond the occasion that produced them. So long as their usage is doubtful, it's safer not to employ them. Slang. Slang is somewhat like chicken pox or measles, very catching, and just as inevitable in its run, and very few of us escape it. It is severest, too, where the sanitary conditions are most favorable to its development. Where there is least thought and culture to counteract its influence, slang words crowd out those of a more serious character, until in time the young and inexperienced speaker or writer is unable to distinguish between the counterfeit and the genuine. While most persons condemn slang, there are very few who are entirely free from its use. It varies greatly in its degrees of coarseness or refinement, and adapts itself to all classes and conditions. Many know no other language, and we are unwillingly compelled to admit that while their speech is often ungrammatical and unrhetorical, it is generally clear, concise, and forcible. Strive to acquire a vocabulary so large and to cultivate a taste so fine that when a slang expression rises to your mind you can use it if you think it best fits the occasion, or substitute something better in its place. Purity of diction is a garden of slow growth, even under the most favorable conditions, and the unrestrained indulgence in slang is like scattering seeds of the vilest plants among the choicest flowers. Society slang. This is an elegant day. That is an elegant view. Mary is awfully nice. Jenny is dreadfully sweet. Gertrude is delicious, and Tom is perfectly splendid. The use of such extravagant phrases tends to weaken the significance of the words when legitimately employed. Commercial slang. Commercial terms are employed in the common language of everyday life to such an extent as to constitute a form of commercial slang. The following will serve for illustration: the balance of the journey, for remainder; he was well posted, for well informed; I calculate he will come tomorrow, for believe or think; I reckon he is your friend, for I suppose. Common slang. To materialize, to burglarize, to enthuse, to suicide, to wire, to jump upon, to sit upon, to take in, are a few of the many examples of slang that should be avoided. Provincialisms. A word that is used only in a limited part of the country is called a provincialism. It must be known and recognized for what it is worth, but not obtruded where it does not belong. Whatever may be said of the faults of speech of the American people, it is doubtful if any other nation, whether it covers a large territory or is limited in area, speaks the language native to the country with the uniformity that we do. Yet there are peculiarities that mark the expression of most of our people, even among the best informed. The words calculate, reckon, and guess are not the only words that betray the locality of the speaker. Any person who has been 500 miles from home cannot fail to have observed words that were used differently from the way in which he had been accustomed to use them, and he probably heard terms of expression that seemed strange to him. In like manner, his own expressions sounded strange to those who heard him. That which distinguished his speech from theirs, and theirs from his, would in large part be covered by the word provincialism. Not only do we have local and sectional peculiarities of speech, but we may be said to have national mannerisms. Mr. Alexander Melville Bell, the eminent elocutionist, relates that some years ago, when residing in Edinburgh, a stranger called to make some inquiries in regard to professional matters. "I have called on you, sir, for the purpose of," etc., etc. "When did you cross the Atlantic?" Bell asked. The stranger looked up with surprise, amounting almost to consternation. "How do you know that I have crossed the Atlantic?" "Your manner of using the little word 'sir' is not heard in England or Scotland." This gentleman, Mr. Bell says, was one of the most eminent teachers of elocution in America, and his speech was perfectly free from ordinary local coloring in all but the one little element which had escaped observation. Which. Much diversity of usage exists, and some difference of opinion prevails concerning the proper expression to use when you are addressed and fail to understand just what has been said. Such interrogative rejoinders as "What?" "How?" "Which?" "Hey?" are plainly objectionable. "Sir?" and "Madam," once common, are no longer tolerated in society. The English expression "beg pardon" has found favor, but it is not wholly acceptable. "Excuse me" is suggested by a writer on the subject. It has no more syllables than "beg pardon," and is nearly equivalent in signification, but it is also subject to the objection that it is often used to imply a difference of opinion, as when a person makes a statement to which you take exception, you begin your reply with the expression "Excuse me." Whatever is adopted will doubtless be a convenient contraction, like "beg pardon," which is a short way of saying "I beg your pardon for failing to understand what you said," or excuse me, which is a condensation of excuse me for not fully grasping your meaning. Words improperly used. Commodious, convenient. A word of caution in the use of the smaller dictionaries is necessary. The most elaborate definition often fails to give an adequate idea of the significance of a term unless it is accompanied with one or more quotations illustrating its use. The small dictionaries give only the briefest definitions without illustration, and therefore should be interpreted with caution. Some years ago, a young man of moderate attainments was very desirous of enlarging his vocabulary and of using words beyond the ordinary vernacular of his neighborhood. To this end, he made a small vest pocket lexicon his constant companion. Having consulted it in the course of a conversation with a friend, he remarked, as he was about to return it to his pocket, "What a commodious book this is!" His friend suggested that he again consult the commodious volume. With a look of the utmost confidence, he turned to the word and exclaimed, "There! I knew I was right. Commodious means convenient, and that's just what this little book is." It was useless to explain that smallness sometimes renders a thing inconvenient, and this young man doubtless still felicitates himself upon his intimate acquaintance with that commodious pocket dictionary. Ability, capacity. A fond mother was told by the principal of a boarding school that her daughter would not be graduated as she lacked capacity. "Well, get her a capacity. Her father won't stand on the matter of expense. Get her anything she wants. He'll foot the bill." But for once the indulgent mother was obliged to learn that there are some things money will not purchase. The father had the financial ability, but the daughter lacked the necessary intellectual capacity. But we may have literary as well as financial ability. Ability implies the power of doing; capacity, the faculty of receiving. About, almost. This work is about done. Use almost done. Acceptance or acceptation. These words cannot be used interchangeably. He wrote signifying his acceptance of the office according to the common acception of this term. He is a knave. Access, accession. He gained access to the fort. The only accession which the Roman Empire received was the province of Britain. Accident, injury. Accident is sometimes used incorrectly for injury, as his accident was very painful. Mutual, common. Some men seek to be great by copying great men's faults. Dickens may say "our mutual friend," but Dickens's strong point was not grammar. If you have a friend in common with Smith, in speaking of him to Smith, say "our common friend." The word mutual should always convey a sense of reciprocity, as happy in our mutual help and mutual love. Myself. This word is generally used for emphasis, as "I myself will do it," and "I wrote it myself." It should not be used for the unemphatic pronouns I and me, as in "James and myself are going to town. He gave the books to James and myself." It is properly used with a reflexive verb without emphasis, as "I will defend myself." Negligence, neglect. Negligence is the habit, neglect the act, of leaving things undone. The adjectives negligent and neglectful should, in like manner, be discriminated. Never, not. The word never is sometimes colloquially used for not, as "I never remember to have seen Lincoln." Say "I do not remember," etc. Never should not be used in reference to events that can take place but once, as Warren never died at Lexington. Love, like. We may love our parents, our children, our country, the truth, and we may like roast turkey and cranberry sauce. "I love cherries," "I adore strawberries," are schoolgirl expressions that should be avoided. Love is an emotion of the heart and not of the palate. Cheap, low priced. These words are often used synonymously. A picture purchased for $10,000 may be cheap. Another, for which $10 was paid, although low priced, may be dear. Mad, angry. The frequent use of mad in the sense of angry should be avoided. A person who is insane is mad. A dog that has hydrophobia is mad. Figuratively, we say mad with rage, mad with terror, mad with pain, but to be vexed or angry or out of patience does not justify the use of so strong a term as mad. Most, almost, very. Sometimes incorrectly used for almost, as "he writes to me most every week." It is often loosely used in the sense of very, as "this is a most interesting book." Aim to use most only as the superlative of much or many. Do not use the indefinite article before it, as "this is a most beautiful picture." We may say "this is the most beautiful picture," for here comparison is implied. Portion or part. "Give me the portion of goods that falleth to me. We travelled a part of the distance on foot." Portion is applied to that which is set aside for a special purpose, often as the share or allotment of an individual, as the wife's portion, the portion of the oldest son, etc. Part is a more general term. Postal. Bryant would not have said, "I will send you a postal by tomorrow's mail." Postal card or postcard would be better. Practical, practicable. These words are sometimes confounded. Practicable means that may be done or accomplished, and implies that the means or resources are available, as a practicable road, a practicable aim. Practical means capable of being turned to use or account, as "the practical man begins by doing, the theorist often ends by thinking." Predicate. This word is sometimes incorrectly used in the sense of form or base, as "he predicated his statement on the information he had just received." Neither should it be used in the sense of predict, as "the sky is overcast, and I predicate a storm tomorrow." Prefer than. "I prefer to walk than to ride." Say, "I prefer walking to riding," or "I would rather walk than ride." To skate is preferable than to coast. Say, "Skating is preferable to coasting." Amount or number. Amount applies to what is thought of in the mass or bulk, as money, wheat, coal. Number is used when we think of the individuals composing the mass, as men, books, horses, or vessels. Answer, reply. An answer implies a question. We may reply to a remark or assertion. A reply is more formal than an answer. Antagonize, alienate, oppose. The word antagonize should not be used in the sense of alienate, as "your proposition will antagonize many supporters of the measure. The Senate opposed the bill which passed the House is better than antagonized the bill." Anticipate, expect. "The arrival of the President was hourly anticipated" is pompous. Use expected. Any, at all. "He was so far from the speaker's platform that he could not hear any." Better, that he could not hear, or hear at all, or hear what was said. Apparent, evident. These words are often used interchangeably. That which is apparent may be what it appears to be, or it may be very different. That which is evident admits of no doubt. The same is true of apparently and evidently. Prejudice. "He is not the best person for the position, but his many kindnesses to me prejudice me in his favor." We may be prejudiced against a person or thing, but cannot be prejudiced in favor. Use predispose. Presume. This word is often employed when think, believe, or dare say would be better. Pretend, profess. "I do not pretend to be an orator." Pretend means to feign, to sham, as "he pretends to be asleep," and should not be used when claim or profess would better suit the purpose. Preventative. The correct form of the word is preventive, not preventative. Previous, previously. The adjective previous is often incorrectly used for the adverb previously, as "previous to his imprisonment he made a confession of his crime." Promise, assure. "I promise you we had a good time yesterday." Promise relates to the future, hence "I assure you," etc., would be better. Propose or purpose. To propose is to set before the mind for consideration. To purpose is to intend. I propose sending my son to college should be I purpose, etc. I propose that you go to college, my son. Thank you, father, I accept the proposal. Sparrowgrass, asparagus. The word sparrowgrass, which is a corruption of the word asparagus, illustrates how readily the uneducated mind associates an unusual term with another that is familiar, and as the mental impression is received through the ear, and lacks that definitiveness which the printed form would give, the new idea, when repeated, often assumes a picturesque, if not a ludicrous form. Many of Mrs. Partington's quaint sayings furnish further illustration. The following incident from a Western paper shows the successive stages in the farmer's mental operations, from the familiar terms skin, hide, oxhide, up to the unfamiliar chemical term oxide, through which he was obliged to pass before he succeeded in making known his wants. The man was in a brown study when he went into the drug store. "What can we do for you?" inquired the clerk. "I want black something," he said. "Have you got any?" "Probably we have," replied the clerk, "but you'll have to be more definitive than that to get it." The farmer thought for a moment. "Got any black sheepskin of something?" he asked. No, we don't keep sheepskins. We have chamois skins, though." "That ain't it, I know," said the customer. Got any other kind of skins?" "No." "Skins, skins, skins," slowly repeated the man, struggling with his slippery memory. "Calf skin seems to be something like it. Got any black calf skins of anything?" No, not a one," and the clerk laughed. The customer grew red in the face. "Confound it," he said, "if it ain't a skin, what in thunder is it?" "Possibly it's a hide," suggested the clerk. "Hey, that's it, exclaimed the man. "Have you got any black hides of something or anything?" The clerk shook his head sadly as the man tramped up and down the store. "Got any black cowhide of anything?" he asked, after a moment's thought. The clerk's face showed a gleam of intelligence, and then broke into a smile. "Possibly it's black oxide of manganese you want," he said quietly. "Of course, that's it," the farmer exclaimed as he threw his arms around the clerk's neck. "I knew blamed well there was a skin or hide or something somewhere about the thing," and he calmed down quietly and waited for what he wanted. Accord, give. They accorded him due praise. They gave him the desired information. Act, action. The best portion of a good man's life is his little, nameless, unremembered acts of kindness and of love. Suit the action to the word. Action suggests the operation. Act, the accomplished result. Adherence, adhesion. These words were once interchangeable, but are now distinct. Adhesion relates to physical bodies, adherence to mental states. Adopt, take. What course will you take is better than what course will you adopt. Affect and effect. These words are sometimes confounded. The climate affected their health. They sailed away without effecting their purpose. Aggravate, exasperate. To aggravate means to intensify, to make worse. To exasperate means to provoke, to irritate, to aggravate the horrors of the scene. His remarks exasperated me. His conduct aggravates me should be his conduct annoys, or displeases, or irritates, or exasperates me. Alleviate, relieve. These words differ chiefly in degree. The latter is the stronger word. Proposal, proposition. A proposition implies consideration or discussion. A proposal contemplates acceptance or rejection. Your proposition to build our new warehouse has received favorable consideration, and we are ready to receive your proposals. Providing, provided. You may go to skate, providing you first finish your task. Well, that's incorrect. You should say provided. Proved, proven. Proven is sometimes incorrectly used for proved. The evidence was complete and his guilt was fully proved, not proven, is a legal term used in England to denote that the guilt of the accused is not made out, though not disproved. Quantity, number. Quantity refers to the how much, number to the how many. He purchased a large quantity of wheat, corn, apples, lime, and sand, and a number of houses, stores, chairs, and books. It is therefore incorrect to say there was a large quantity of bicycles in the yard. He sold a large quantity of books at auction. Quite a few. In some parts of the country this expression is in common use in the sense of many, a large number, etc. How many people were at church today? Quite a few, meaning a considerable number. Commence, begin. Some persons always commence but never begin. The tendency toward pomp and parade in speech prompts many persons to avoid the use of our strong, rugged Anglo-Saxon words, and to substitute their high-sounding Latin equivalents, until in time the preferable native forms come to be regarded as commonplace and objectionable. American usage is more faulty than English in this regard. Use begin and beginning more, and commence and commencement less. Complete, finished. There's a distinction in the use of these words that's not always observed. Complete signifies nothing lacking, every element and part being supplied. That which is finished has had all done to it that was intended. A vessel may be finished and yet be incomplete. Conclusion, end. The more pretentious word conclusion is often used where the simple Anglo-Saxon word end would be preferable. Conscious, aware. He was aware of the enemy's designs. Conscious of his fate, he boldly approached the furious beast. Conscious relates to what is within our own mind, aware to what is without. Continual, continuous. Continuous implies uninterrupted, unbroken. Continual relates to acts that are frequently repeated. The continuous ride is often finished in 5 hours, but owing to continual delays, we were 8 hours on the way. Convict, convince. The Irishman who brandished his club and exclaimed that he was open to conviction, but he would like to see the man that could convince him, used a form of argument that was most convincing, but failed in his discrimination of language. Convict refers to the outer condition and generally applies to something wrong. Convince, which may be used of either right or wrong, refers to the judgment. Custom, habit. Habit is a tendency which leads us to do easily. Custom grows out of the habitual doing or frequent repetition of the same act. Custom refers to the usages of society or of the individual. Habit refers more frequently to the individual acts. Ill habits gather by unseen degrees. Man yields to custom as he bows to fate, in all things ruled mind, body, and estate. Want, need. These words are often used interchangeably, but should be discriminated. Need implies the lack. Want also implies the lack, but couples with it the wish to supply the lack. Some men need help, but will not ask for it. Others want help, that is, they need help or think they do, and ask for it, and get it, too. Away. He's way down in Florida is incorrect. He is away down in Florida is better grammar. He is in Florida is still better. Down indicates the direction, and away magnifies the distance. As most persons know the direction, and as modern railway travel shortens long distances, the abbreviated sentence is sufficiently full. Ways, way. He is a long ways from home is a very common but faulty expression. Say, Uncle Charles is now a long way on his journey. The boat is a good way off the shore. Whole, all. The whole of the scholars went to the fair today. All of the school went to the fair today. the sentence will be improved by transposing whole and all. All of the scholars went to the fair today, not half of them. The whole school went to the fair today, not a part of it. All refers to the individual scholars, whole to the school as a unit. Without, unless. He cannot miss the way without he forgets my instructions. I will not dig the potatoes without Tom comes to help. Use unless instead of without. Worse, more. He dislikes arithmetic worse than grammar. Use more instead of worse. Rarely, rare. It is rarely that you hear of a prodigal youth growing into an economical man. Rarely should be rare to form the adjective attribute of the verb. Real, really. Real is often incorrectly used as an adverb, especially by schoolgirls, as, I think he is real mean. The grammar will be improved by substituting really for real, but the expression as a whole being applied to all kinds and degrees of offenses has become meaningless. Real is often carelessly used in the sense of very, as real pretty, real bright, real kind. Recipe or receipt. A recipe is a formula for making some mixture or preparation of materials. A receipt is an acknowledgment of that which has been received. Region, neighborhood. Region is a broader and more comprehensive term, and should not be applied to the narrow limits of a neighborhood. Remit, send. The word remit is often used when send would be better. Remit means to send back, to forgive, to relax. In its commercial sense, it means to transmit or send money in payment of a demand, as he remitted the amount by mail. Residence, house. This pretentious word is often used when house or home would be in better taste. Deface, disfigure. The walls of many public buildings are defaced by persons who desire that their names shall remain when they are gone. They disfigure their faces that they may appear unto men to fast. Disfigure applies more generally to persons, deface to things. Demean, degrade. The word demean is often incorrectly used in the sense of degrade or lower. It should be used in the sense of behave, conduct, deport, and not in the sense of degrade. Depot or station. For many years the word depot was largely employed in the sense of a railway station. Its primary meaning is a warehouse or storehouse or military station. As applied to a stopping place for railroad trains, the English word station is greatly to be preferred to the French word depot, and is rapidly coming into general use in this country. Description, kind. Flowers of every description were found in his garden. In the above sense, the word kind or variety would be more appropriate. Bring, fetch, carry. Bring implies motion from the object toward the person who issues the command or makes the request. Fetch implies two motions: first, toward the object; second, toward the person who wishes it. The gardener, who is in the garden, calls to his servant, who is at the barn, "John, bring me the rake; you will find it in the barn." And if John is with him in the garden, he would say, "John, fetch me the rake from the barn." The use of fetch is more common among English writers than with us. In fact, many speakers and writers in America rarely use the word. Carry is a more general term, and means to convey without thought of the direction. Character, reputation. These words are often confounded. Character, says Abbott, is what a person is. Reputation is what he is supposed to be. Character is in himself, reputation is in the minds of others. Character is injured by temptations and by wrongdoing, reputation by slanders and libels. Character endures throughout defamation in every form, but perishes where there is a voluntary transgression. Reputation may last through numerous transgressions, but be destroyed by a single and even an unfounded accusation of aspersion. Farther, further. Although these words are often used interchangeably, even by good writers, yet a finer taste and a keener power of discrimination is shown in the use of farther when referring to literal distance, and of further in reference to quantity or degree, as each day's journey removes them farther from home. He concluded his speech by remarking that he had nothing further to say. Farther is the comparative of far, further is the comparative of forth. Fault, defect. Speakers and writers often fail to discriminate in the use of these words. A defect implies a deficiency, a lack, a falling short, while a fault signifies that there is something wrong. Men still had faults, and men still have them still. He that hath none, and lives as angels do, must be an angel. It is in general more profitable to reckon up our defects than to boast of our attainments. Few, little. These words and their comparatives, fewer, less, are often confounded. Few relates to number, or to what may be counted. Little refers to quantity, or to what may be measured. A man may have few books and little money. He may have fewer friends and less influence than his neighbor. But do not say, the man has less friends than his neighbor. Each other, one another. While some excellent authorities use these expressions interchangeably, most grammarians and authors employ each other in referring to two persons or things, and one another when more than two are considered, as in, both contestants speak kindly of each other. Gentlemen are always polite to one another. Those who prefer to have wide latitude in speech will be glad to know that Murray, in one of the rules in his grammar, says, two negatives in English destroy one another. Shakespeare says, it's a good divine that follows his own instructions. I can easily teach 20 what were good to be done, than be one of the 20 to follow mine own teaching. This is as true of expression as of morals. Either, neither. Palms and beautiful flowers lined the hall on either side is a common but faulty form of expression. Either refers to one of two things. In the foregoing sentence, the thought is that both sides of the hall were lined, hence the word both should have been used. If, however, each side of the hall is thought of separately, then each would be the proper word to employ. Either of the two books will please you. Any of the three books will prove satisfactory. Any one of the 5 men would make a good candidate. Neither of the 2 men will serve. None of the 10 men were present. Not one of all the houses was left standing. These sentences represent the best usage with regard to either, neither, and also of any, none, any one, not one. These kind. Adjectives implying number must agree with the nouns which they qualify. This and that qualify nouns in the singular. These and those belong to nouns in the plural. These kind of potatoes grow well in this soil. Use this. This 20 years have I known him. Use these. The beam was 2 foot above my head. Use feet. For this, among other reasons, I abandoned the profession. Say, for this reason, among others, I abandoned the profession. He rides the bicycle daily, and by this means he preserves his health. The partners were all honest, courteous, and industrious, and by these means acquired wealth. The word means being either singular or plural. The 2 preceding sentences are both correct. Some means or another. By some means or another he always gets the better part of the bargain. This sentence may be corrected by saying, one means or another, or some means or other. Than. After other, otherwise, else, or an adjective in the comparative degree, than should be used, and not but or except. No other way but this was open to him. Use than. History and philosophy cannot otherwise affect the mind but for its enlargement and benefit. Use than. Flowers are often nothing else but cultivated weeds. Use than. He no sooner entered the bridge but he met the infuriated bull coming toward him. Use than. He offered no other objection except that one already mentioned. Use than. He read 5 other books on crime and its causes in addition to those you named. Use than. With equal propriety we may say, he offered no objection except the one already mentioned, or he read 5 books on crime and its causes in addition to those you named. It's the use of the word other, or otherwise, or else, that makes necessary the correlative term than. Besides. After else and other, the preposition besides is sometimes employed. Other boys besides these are mischievous. Other arts besides music are elevating and inspiring. We must have recourse to something else besides punishment. It will be observed that the use of besides in this section differs from the use of than in the preceding discussion. Other than is exclusive of those mentioned, whereas other besides includes those mentioned. Other. Iron is more useful than all the metals. The faultiness of this sentence becomes apparent when we remember that iron itself is a metal, and is included in the word metals, which forms one side of the comparison. In short, iron is more useful than iron together with all the other metals. This statement is obviously absurd. The sentence should therefore read, iron is more useful than all the other metals. The Washington Monument is higher than any monument in America. Since it is in America, and as it cannot be higher than itself, the sentence is made correct by adding the word other, as the Washington Monument is higher than any other monument in America. This book, which I have just finished, is superior to any work on the subject that I have yet seen. Say, to any other work. Of all other creatures, man is the most highly endowed. Say, of all creatures, etc. No general was ever so beloved by his soldiers. Say instead, no other general. Nothing delights him so much as a storm at sea. Nothing else delights him, etc. One's, or his. Whether we should say one ought to know one's own mind, or one ought to know his own mind, is a question that the critics have earnestly discussed, but have never settled, except as each settles it for himself. The masculine pronoun is often used with an antecedent whose gender is not known. There can, therefore, be no objection to the use of his on the question of gender. As a matter of euphony, his is preferable to one's. Both have the sanction of good usage. None. Although literally signifying no one, the word none may be used with a plural verb, having the force of a collective noun. None but the brave deserve the fair. Dryden. None knew thee but to love thee, none named thee but to praise. Halleck. I look for ghosts, but none will force their way to me. Wordsworth. Of all the girls that e'er were seen, there's none so fine as Nelly. Swift. All, whole. The word all is often incorrectly used for the whole. The river rose and spread over all the valley. This should be over the whole valley. The day being stormy, the members of Class A were all the children at school today. Correct by saying, were the only children at school today. Perpetually, continually. Perpetually is not synonymous with continually. Perpetually means never ceasing. That which is done continually may be subject to interruptions. Persuade. Advice. Almost thou persuadest me to be a Christian. Paul had advised many persons to become Christians, some of whom, like Agrippa, were almost persuaded. Wharf. Dock. These words are sometimes confounded. The wharf is the pier or landing upon which the vessel unloads her cargo. The dock is the artificial waterway or basin formed by the wharves. The vessel came into the dock and was made fast to the wharf. Contemptible, contemptuous. Contemptible is sometimes incorrectly used for contemptuous. A story is told of Richard Parson, an English scholar and critic. A gentleman, being in dispute with him, angrily exclaimed, "My opinion of you is most contemptible, sir." Upon which Parson quickly retorted, "I never knew an opinion of yours that was not contemptible." Healthy, wholesome. These terms are not synonymous. Toadstools may be healthy, but they would not be regarded as wholesome. Plants and animals are healthy when the conditions of their growth are favorable. They are wholesome when, as food, they promote the health of those persons who eat them. In a fix. Many persons, instead of saying "he is in trouble," or "he is in an awkward position," or "he is perplexed" or embarrassed, employ the vulgarism "he's in a fix," although Shakespeare may say this was the most unkindest cut of all, and De Quincey may write, "Poor Aurora cannot live and cannot die, so that he is in an almighty fix. We lesser mortals are forbidden such expressions." Fly versus flee. In a general sense, fly is applied to winged creatures, and flee to persons. What exile from himself can flee? When the swallows homeward fly. The past tense forms are sometimes confused, as "the inhabitants flew to the fort for safety," "the wild geese have all fled to the south." The principal parts of the verbs are, for present, past, and perfect participle, fly, flew, flown, and flee, fled, fled. The verbs flew and fled in the foregoing sentences should be transposed. Fly implies motion either from or toward. Flee implies motion from. Fly may be used in a figurative sense of persons to indicate great speed, as of wings. "I flew to his rescue," "he flew to my rescue." "Resist the devil, and he will flee from you." The word flown is sometimes used erroneously as the past tense or perfect participle of the verb flow. The parts of this verb are flow, flowed, flowed. The river has overflowed, not overflown, its banks. Get, got. Because a horse is willing is no reason why he should be ridden to death. The verb get and its past tense form got admit of many meanings, as the following from an old English publication fully proves. "I got on horseback within 10 minutes after I got your letter. When I got to Canterbury I got a chaise for town, but I got wet through before I got to Canterbury, and I have got such a cold as I shall not be able to get rid of in a hurry. I got to the Treasury about noon, but first of all I got shaved and dressed. I soon got into the secret of getting a memorial before the board, but I could not get an answer then. However, I got intelligence from the messenger that I should most likely get an answer the next morning. As soon as I got back to my inn I got my supper and got to bed. It was not long before I got to sleep. When I got up in the morning I got myself dressed, and then got my breakfast, that I might get out in time to get an answer to my memorial. As soon as I got it I got into the chaise and got to Canterbury by 3, and about tea time I got home. I have got nothing more to say." Those who are disposed to overwork the words get and got will find it interesting and profitable to read the foregoing exercise, substituting other words for got, printed in italics. With have, the word got is generally superfluous, as "I have got a cold," "I have got to go to Boston this evening," "Have you got Hyers root beer on draft?" For "I did not get to meet your cousin," say "I had no opportunity," or "I was prevented," etc. Another very faulty use of got is heard in such expressions as "he got killed," "they got beaten," "she got cured," etc. Was or were would be more appropriate. Since to get means to obtain, to procure, to gain, the use of the word is justified in such expressions as "I have got a larger farm than you have, because I have worked harder for it." I have got a better knowledge of the Pacific coast than he has, because I traveled extensively through that region, and yet, when we have been overworked, the physician usually prescribes a period of absolute rest. So, in view of the multifarious uses to which get has been applied, would it not be well to permit it to retire for a time, in order that it may be the more quickly rejuvenated? Guess, or reckon, calculate, allow. I guess he's not going to vote today. I reckon we're going to have fair weather now. I calculate this ground would grow good potatoes. I allow she's the prettiest girl that ever visited these parts. The foregoing sentences may be improved by recasting them. I think he is not going to or will not vote today. I believe we shall now have fair weather. I suppose this ground would yield fine potatoes. I regard her as the handsomest lady that has ever visited this place, or neighborhood, or locality. Gums versus overshoes. Tom is outside cleaning his gums on the mat. Now, while a mat will do very well for overshoes, a toothbrush and sozodont would probably be better for the gums. Funny. Isn't it funny that Smith, who resided in Chicago, should have died the same day that his father died in Boston? Isn't it funny that the murderer who escaped hanging on a mere technicality of the law should have been killed the next day in a railroad accident? How funny that these maples should grow so tall on this mountain top! It is funny to think that James, who now pays his addresses to me, should once have been in love with my youngest sister. The foregoing illustrations are not more incongruous than those we daily hear. Odd, strange, peculiar, unusual, represent some of the ideas intended to be conveyed by that much abused word, funny. Good deal or great deal? This idiom is defended by some authorities as being in perfectly good use, and by others it is denounced as being incorrect. Both good deal and great deal are somewhat colloquial, and should be used sparingly in writing. Had better, would better. Like a good deal and some other idioms, this expression is denounced by some writers and defended by others. Grammatical construction supports more strongly the forms would better, would rather, etc. I had rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than to dwell in the tents of wickedness. I would rather read than drive today. I would rather not go. Omit rather, and the superiority of would over had becomes apparent. If versus whether. I do not know if he sold his farm or exchanged it for city property. Use whether. Illy or ill. Do not use illy for ill. The former is becoming obsolete, and the latter, as an adverb, is taking its place. Say, an ill-ventilated room, not an illy-ventilated room. Implicit. This word means tacitly understood, resting on the word or authority of another. It should not be used in the sense of unbounded, unlimited. Individual. This word should not be used broadly in the sense of a person, but should always convey some thought of a single thing or person, as opposed to many. Journal. As the word is from the French, jour, for day, it should not be applied to a monthly or quarterly magazine. Know as. I do not know as I can see you today. Say, know that. Last or latest. Did you receive my last letter? I hope not. I enjoy your letters very much, and I trust you may live to write many more. Cunning. This word is much used by young ladies in speaking of what is small or dainty or pleasing, as a cunning little bonnet, a cunning little watch, etc., while the word properly embodies the idea of skill or dexterity on the part of the workman, and while the appreciation of such skill in speaking of the artist or artisan might be expressed by cunning, it is better not to use the word in referring to the product of the workmanship. Curious. Curious means inquisitive, rare. In the sense of strange or remarkable, its use should be guarded. Cute. This word is often used colloquially in the sense of clever, sharp, shrewd, ingenious, cunning. It is doubtless an abbreviation of acute. It is not found in good literary usage. Favor, resemble. The use of the word favor in the sense of resemble is a provincialism that should be avoided. The son favors the father is correct, if the meaning being that the son shows favor or kindness to the father, but if reference to their similarity of appearance is intended, the verb resemble should be employed. Balance versus remainder. This word, like numerous others, has been borrowed from the commercial world, and has had such a wide use that its faultiness is not noticed even by many who regard themselves as careful speakers and writers. I cut down part of the timber this year, and expect to cut the balance next spring. My cousin will remain with us the balance of this week. James ate half of the melon today, and will eat the balance tomorrow. In these and all similar cases, the word remainder should be used. Balance is a term that applies to accounts, and signifies the amount necessary to be added to one side of the account in order to make it equal the other. Behave. Now, my children, you must behave while I am gone. The mother intended to ask her children to behave well, but as behave is a neutral word, and may be followed by well or ill, her form of expression permits the children to supply whichever adverb suits them the better. Behave requires a qualifying word to make the meaning clear. Bound. He was determined to study medicine, not he was bound, etc. Bound implies that he was under a bond of obligation to another, rather than impelled by the action of his own mind. Better versus best. While some good writers violate the rule, yet the best authorities restrict the use of the comparative degree to two objects. Mary is the better scholar of the two. Although both are young, Susan is the younger. Of two evils choose the lesser, not the least. Former, first. Former and latter, being adjectives of the comparative degree, should be used in speaking of two objects. When more than two objects are named, use first and last. My sons, John and Luther, are both at college. The first expects to study law, and the last to study medicine. Use former and latter. New York, Philadelphia, and Chicago are the most populous cities in the United States. The former has long been at the front, the latter has only recently entered the race. Use first and last instead of former and latter. These and those. When objects near and remote are referred to, this and its plural, these, are applied to the objects near at hand, that and its plural, those, to objects at a distance. When reference is made to contrasted antecedent terms, this and these are applied to the latter, that and those to the former, as farewell, my friends, farewell, my foes, my peace with these, my love with those. That from Burns. Fictitious writer. Do not say a fictitious writer when you mean a writer of fiction. Firstly. First is an adverb as well as an adjective. We should, therefore, say first, secondly, thirdly, and not firstly, secondly, etc. First rate. An article may be rated in quality as first, or second, or third. If it rates first, it may be called a first-rate article. The word is properly used as an adjective, but should not be employed as an adverb, as in the sentence, "He sings first rate." Fix, or mend, or repair. Fix means to make fast, but its incorrect use in the sense of mend, repair, arrange, is so common that the word, when properly used, sounds strange, if not strained. To fix up the room, to fix up the accounts, to fix up matters with my creditors, to fix the rascals who betrayed me, are examples illustrating the looseness with which the word is used. Round versus square. When a thing is round or square, it cannot be rounder or squarer. These adjectives do not admit of comparative and superlative forms, but we may say more nearly round or less nearly square. States versus says. He states he is going fishing tomorrow. States is too formal a word, and should be used only of some important assertion. He says he is going, etc. Stop versus stay. To stop is to cease moving. At what hotel do you stop should be at what hotel do you stay. When you come to the city, stay with me, not stop with me. Subtile versus subtle. Subtile means thin, fine, rare, and delicate. Subtle means sly, artful, cunning, elusive. More subtile web Arachne cannot spin. He had to contend with a subtle foe. Summons. He was summoned to appear before the judge should be he was summoned to appear. Tasty. Often used in colloquial speech when tasteful would be better. Tastily for tastefully is still worse. Team. Properly, this word relates only to the horses and does not include the carriage. Those kind versus these sort. It is unpleasant to have to associate with those kind of people. These sort of sheep are the most profitable. Kind and sort are nouns of the singular number. These and those are plural, and according to the laws of grammar, the adjective and noun must agree in number. The corrected sentences will read, "It is unpleasant to have to associate with this kind of people. This sort of sheep is the most profitable." The fault arises by associating in the mind the adjectives these and those with the nouns sheep and people, which nouns are more prominent in the mind than the nouns kind and sort. If the ear is not satisfied, the sentences may readily be recast as, "It is unpleasant to have to associate with people of that kind. Sheep of this sort are the most profitable." Transpire versus happen. This word from trans, across, through, and spirare, to breathe, means physiologically to pass off in the form of vapor or insensible perspiration, or botanically to evaporate from living cells. Its general meaning is to become known, to escape from secrecy. It is frequently employed in the sense of to occur, to come to pass, but this use is condemned by the best critics in England and America. The proceedings of the secret session of the council soon transpired. This sentence illustrates the true meaning of the word. Make versus manufacture. These words may, in some cases, be used interchangeably, but make has much the wider range of meanings. The following story, related by Eli Perkins, will illustrate this point. I was talking one day with Mr. Depew, president of the New York Central Railroad, about demand and supply. I said the price of any commodity is always controlled by the demand and supply. "Not always, Eli," said Depew. "Demand and supply don't always govern prices. Business tact sometimes governs them." "When," I asked, "did an instance ever occur when the price did not depend on demand and supply?" "Well," said Mr. Depew, "the other day I stopped up to a German butcher, and out of curiosity asked, 'What's the price of sausages?' '20 cents a pound,' he said. 'You asked 25 this morning,' I replied. 'Yeah, that was when I had some. Now I ain't got none. I sell 'em for 20 cents. That makes a reputation for selling cheap, and I don't lose nothings.'" "You see," Mr. Depew said, laughing, "I don't want any sausage, and the man didn't have any. No demand and no supply, and still the price of sausage went down 5 cents." "Well, there are strange things in this world," I said. "Now, take the words manufacture and make. I always thought that both words meant the same thing." Why, they do, Eli," said Mr. Depew. "Not always," I said. "Now, when could they have a different meaning?" Why, this morning I came down from Albany on a Central car, manufactured to carry 50 passengers, but it was made to carry 72 people." "Yes, I dare say. But we'll now talk about the Bering Sea question." End of Slips of Speech, Chapter 2, Part 1, by John H. Bechtel, read by Mike Harris. Slips of Speech, by John H. Bechtel, Chapter 2, Part 2, read for the LibriVox Language Learning Collection, Volume 2. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Chapter 2, Choice of Words. Truth and veracity. The veracity of his statement is doubted. the sentence should be "the truth of his statement is doubted," or, "in making that statement, his veracity is doubted." Veracity is applied to the person, truth to the thing. Try the experiment. They are trying the experiment of running railroad trains by electricity. Well, this should be, they are making the experiment, etc. The word experiment contains the idea of trial. Hence, to try the experiment is to try the trial. Little piece. I will go with you a little piece, a short distance or a part of the way would be more appropriate. Every confidence. I have every confidence in his ability to succeed. Confidence is a unit. Every implies several units considered separately. I have the greatest confidence in his ability to succeed is correct. Ugly. The word properly applies to the appearance of a person or thing. Hence, such expressions as "he has an ugly temper," "this is an ugly customer," "that was an ugly rumor," etc., although common in colloquial discourse, should be avoided in dignified address. Unbeknown. This is a provincialism that should be avoided. Use unknown. Underhanded. Often incorrectly used for underhand, as "that was a contemptible and underhanded trick." Calligraphy. This word means not writing simply, but beautiful writing. Hence, to say, "His calligraphy is wretched" is equivalent to saying, "His excellent writing is poor," which, of course, is a contradiction of terms. Can but, or cannot but. These expressions are sometimes confounded. "If I perish, I can but perish," means I can only perish, or I can do no more than perish. "I cannot but speak of the things I have heard," means that I am under a moral necessity to speak of these things. The past tense forms could but and could not but should be in like manner discriminated. Casualty, casuality. The latter word, casuality, is sometimes used in place of the former. The first is legitimate, the second is without authority. The words specialty and speciality have a termination similar to the above. They may generally be used interchangeably, and are both legitimate. Complected. The lady is light complected, has blue eyes and auburn hair. Complected is a provincialism without sanction. The lady is of light complexion, has blue eyes, etc. Disremember. This word is obsolete. Use forget, or I do not remember. Lie, lay. The verbs lie and lay are often confounded, even by intelligent persons. Lie does not take an object. We cannot lie a thing. It is therefore intransitive. Lay, which means to place in position, requires an object. We lay a book on a table or bricks on the wall. It is therefore transitive. The principal parts of the first verb are lie, lay, lain, and of the second, lay, laid, laid. The word lay is found in both, and this is in part accountable for the confusion. The most frequent errors result from using laid, the past tense form of the transitive verb, when the word lay, the past tense form of the intransitive verb, should be used. The ear naturally expects the usual past tense ending of the d or t sound, and as that is absent in the past tense of lie, the past tense form of the other verb is substituted. For the same reason, the participle form laid is often incorrectly used for lain. He told me to lie down, and I lay down, not laid down. I told him to lay the book down, and he laid it down. The ship lay at anchor. They lay by during the storm. The book is lying on the shelf. He lay on the ground and took cold. They lay in ambush. Lie low, or he will discover you. The goods are still lying on his hands. Time lay heavily on their hands. We must lie over at the next station. A motion was made that the resolution lie on the table. Now I lie down to sleep. Now I lay me down to sleep. The foregoing sentences illustrate the correct usage of these confusing verbs. As and that. Did your cousin go to town yesterday? Not as I know. Better, not that I know. Better still, I do not know. I do not know as I shall go. Use that for as. Bad toothache. As it is a rare thing to have a good toothache, we scarcely need the adjective bad to distinguish between the two kinds of toothache. Say instead severe. Beautifully and beautiful. After verbs of seeing, feeling, tasting, and smelling, the adverb is often incorrectly used for the adjective. The colonel looked handsomely in his military dress. I feel splendidly today. This peach tastes badly. The rose smells sweetly, are all incorrect. Use handsome for handsomely, very well or in good spirits for splendidly, tastes bad or has a disagreeable taste for badly, and sweet for sweetly. Beg and beg leave. I beg to announce the sale of a collection of rare and costly rugs. I beg to acknowledge your kindness in sending me this handsome present. In each case say, I beg leave to. Due or owing. His success was due to his honesty and energy. That is due which should be paid as a debt. That is owing which is referred to as a cause or source. The bill is now due and payable at the gas office. His success was owing to his honesty and energy. Each and every. I see him at his office each day of the week. In this sentence the word every would be better. Each refers to singular days particularized. Here reference is made to what occurs on all days without exception. Both words refer to nouns in the singular, hence such expressions as the following are incorrect. Every soldier and sailor stood at their post. The prisoners were discharged and went each their several ways. Correct by saying, the prisoners were discharged and went each his several way. Every soldier and sailor stood at his post. Each or both. Both parties maintained their original positions. As the parties are thought of separately, the sentence should be, each party maintained its original position. Both parties strove to place their best candidates upon the ticket is correct, because the parties are thought of collectively. Both or both of. Both is used alone before nouns, and both of before pronouns. Both men have studied the currency question. Both of them are well informed in matters relating to the currency. Ever versus never. Let him be ever so rich, says Emerson. You spend ever so much money in entertaining your equals and betters, says Thackeray. Though he run ever so fast, he cannot win the race. Writers and grammarians differ, some preferring ever, others never. Every once in a while. This is a cumbersome, awkward expression that should be avoided. Occasionally, frequently, or at intervals, are among the expressions that may be used in its place. Exceptionable, exceptional. He enjoyed exceptionable opportunities for acquiring the Greek language. Say, exceptional opportunities. Female, woman. The word female is often employed when woman would be better. Female applies to all of the feminine gender, including the brute creation. Poet or poetess. The tendency to increase the number of nouns with the feminine ending ess should be checked. Avoid poetess, authoress, doctoress, and other newly invented words of this kind. Fewer versus less. Fewer refers to number, less to quantity. He had less friends than I, and yet he was elected. Say, he had fewer friends. There were no less than 50 cows in the field. Use fewer. Right smart. In some portions of the South, the expression right smart is employed in colloquial discourse to convey the idea of a large quantity or in large measure, as we have right smart of peaches this summer, meaning we have a large crop of peaches. He knows right smart of Latin, or he knows considerable Latin, or he is well versed in Latin. A little bit. Will you have some of this pudding? If you please, give me a little bit. Did you injure yourself when you fell? No, but I soiled my clothing a little bit. A small portion or piece in the first sentence, and slightly in the second, would serve as good equivalents for a little bit. Sight. There was a sight of people at the fair today, in the sense of a large number. This word, like the word lot, should be avoided. Crowd. A dozen persons may constitute a crowd if they push and jostle one another by reason of insufficient space. 1,000 men will not form a crowd if all have ample room to sit or stand or move about. Chock full. This word is not authorized. Chock full and choke full may be used, but are not elegant. Contemplate, propose. Contemplate is often incorrectly used for propose, as I contemplate going to the country. Dispense and dispense with. These expressions are not synonymous. To dispense is to give. To dispense with is to do without. The pharmacist dispenses medicines. We should be pleased if we could dispense with them. Dry or thirsty. Dry is often incorrectly used in the sense of thirsty, as I am dry, let me have a glass of water. To say I am dry, my waterproof and umbrella kept out the rain, is correct. Dutch versus German. Do not call a German a Dutchman. A Dutchman comes from Holland, a German from Germany. Evacuate versus vacate. Evacuate means to make empty, and should not be used in the sense of to go away, to vacate. Different than, different to. The school is conducted in a very different manner than it used to be. This basket of roses is different to yours. The above and similar expressions are decided vulgarisms and should be avoided. The school is conducted in a very different manner from what it used to be. This basket of roses is different from yours. Drive versus ride. Some confusion exists in the use of the words drive and ride. In England the distinction is made of applying ride to going on horseback, and drive to going in a carriage, whether you ride or drive. That usage is not closely followed in this country. He who guides the horse drives, the rest of the company ride. The noun and participial forms are more excusable than the verb. Jones asked me to drive with him this afternoon, but as Jones expects to do the driving himself, the speaker should have said, Jones asked me to take a ride, or go driving, or take a drive, etc. Couple versus several. The word couple is often incorrectly used in the sense of several, as a couple of horses, mules, birds, trees, houses, etc. The use of the word couple is not only limited to two, but to two that may be coupled or yoked together. A man and wife are spoken of as a couple. We speak of a span of horses, a yoke of oxen, a brace of ducks, a pair of gloves. Directly, immediately, as soon as. A faulty English use of the above words has found some favor in the United States. Directly the whistle blew, the workman left the shop. Say, as soon as the whistle blew, etc. Immediately he closed his speech, his opponent rose to reply. Say, when, or as soon as he closed his speech, etc. Directly denotes without any delay. Immediately implies without any interposition of other occupation. Agreeably disappointed. When our hopes are blasted, our plans balked, our expectations defeated, our intentions thwarted, we are disappointed. We prefer the agreeable to the disagreeable, and plan and labor to secure it. When our plans fail, we are disappointed, but not agreeably disappointed. If the new conditions, which are not of our seeking, prove agreeable, it's only after the sense of disappointment has vanished. Allude to, or refer to, or mention. The word allude is often incorrectly used. Allusion is the byplay of language. It means to hint at by remote suggestion, to speak of figuratively or sportively. Whatever is directly mentioned or spoken of or described cannot be said to be alluded to. The terms differ in degree, the first being the weakest. An allusion is an indirect reference. Among the rest. Mary sat on the beach among the rest. Say, with the rest. Peruse. This is one of those high-sounding terms too often employed when read would be much better. Emigrants or immigrants. These words are sometimes confounded. Did you see the emigrants on the Indiana which arrived this morning? Did the immigrants go directly to Italy? Exchange those words in the two sentences, and they will be correctly used. Somewheres. The terminal s should be omitted in such words as anywheres, somewheres, nowheres, anyways, hereabouts, thereabouts, whereabouts. In such cases as "Whereabouts did you find him?" and "We knew his whereabouts," the s is properly retained. Apart and aside. "May I see you apart from the others?" It should be, "May I see you privately or aside." Fire versus throw. We fire a gun, but throw a stone. To fire a stone, fire him out of the house, fire him out of our employ, may be graphic ways of presenting the thought, but good writers never use them, and good speakers should avoid them. The first versus single. I have not found the first objection to his candidacy. Say instead, a single objection, or no objection. First to. Such has been the strong desire to continue to use forms of expression that we have long used, that not a little time and effort have been expended in the endeavor to make the wrong appear right. It's an accepted fact, however, that a large majority of the best speakers and writers now say the first two, the last five, etc., rather than the two first, the five last. Future versus subsequent. The word future is sometimes used instead of subsequent, as, "Until he was 18 years old, his conduct was marked by cruelty and malice, but his future life was characterized by kindness and generosity." Future looks forward from the present, and not from some point of time in the past. Gents' pants. Gents' pants scoured and pressed. Business signs and business advertisements are responsible for many vulgarisms. Never say gents nor pants. Even pantaloons is not so good a word as trousers. Sit or set. Few words afford a more fertile field for grammatical blundering than the verbs sit and set. The important fact to remember in the use of the words is that sit in modern usage is an intransitive verb and does not take an object, while set, which means to place in position, is transitive and requires an object to complete its meaning. You cannot sit a thing, but you do set or place a thing. The verb sit undergoes a slight change with the change of tense or time. I sit at the window today. I sat at the window yesterday. I have sat at the window daily for many years. Sitting at the window, I saw the storm arise. Having sat at his table, I can testify to his hospitality. The transitive verb set undergoes no tense changes. See me set this vase on the table. He set his seal to the paper yesterday. Jones will not set the world on fire with his writings. Having set my affairs in order, I returned home. I sit down, I sat down, I set him down. There are many intransitive uses of the verb set, as the sun sets, the tide sets toward the south, the fruit has set, he set out for Boston. There's a difference of opinion as to whether we should say the coat sets well or the coat sits well, with the greater weight in favor of sits. The hen sits on her eggs. She is a sitting hen. When the verb is used reflexively, use set and not sat, as I set me down beside her, not I sat me down beside her. Anyhow, this word can scarcely be regarded as elegant, and should not be used except in colloquial style. Awful. Few words among the many that go to make up the vocabulary of American slang have been in longer use and have a wider range than the word awful. From the loftiest and most awe-inspiring themes to the commonest trifle, this much abused word has been employed. A correct speaker or writer almost fears to use the word lest he should suggest the idea of slang, and thus detract from the subject to which the word might most fittingly be applied. Even the grammatical form of the word is often violated in such expressions as, "Isn't he awful nice?" or "That hat of hers is awful pretty." To say awfully nice and awfully pretty would improve the grammar, but the gross vulgarism remains. The word, when properly used, means inspiring with awe or dread, often accompanied with reverence, as when Milton says, "The trumpet spake not to the armed throng, but kings sat still with awful eye, as if they surely knew their sovereign Lord was by." Back up. In the sense of support, this and the shorter expression back are doubtless borrowed from the commercial world. While they may be tolerated in conversation, they must be regarded as slang. Bulk. This word is often incorrectly used for most or the greater part, as the bulk of the people oppose the measure. Bulk refers to size, not to numbers. Burglarize. This word is often used by the more sensational reporters in their reports of crime. It should be avoided. But what, or but that. I don't know but what I shall have to punish him. The sentence should read, I don't know but that I shall have to punish him. It is equivalent to I think that I shall have to punish him. The omission of but will convey the opposite meaning. I don't know that I shall have to punish him is equivalent to I think that I shall not have to punish him. Calculate. A provincialism often used in the sense of think, deem, suppose, believe, as I calculate the train will be here in 10 minutes. Calculated versus liable. This word is often incorrectly used in the sense of likely, liable, or apt, as his utterances are calculated to injure his cause. In the proper use of the word there is present the idea of purpose or intent. Leave versus quit. Leave is often incorrectly used for quit, as that eminent actor expects soon to leave the stage. It would be a misfortune if he should take the stage with him. Say, quit the stage. Henry has quit smoking. Here, left off or stopped would be better. The President gave me leave to speak with him. Say, give me leave. Let it alone and let me be are preferable to leave it alone and leave me be. A1. I've just read an A1 article on the currency question in the last issue of the North American Review. This is an expression from the vocabulary of business converted into the slang of the street. Luck. Luck-like behavior may be either good or bad. The carpenter has met with luck, he fell and broke his leg. The manager has met with luck, his salary has been doubled. The adjective lucky and the adverb luckily are used only in a favorable sense. Make way with. This expression is often incorrectly used for make away with, as the judge gave the bootblacks a Christmas dinner, and the begrimed urchins quickly made way with the turkey and cranberry sauce. Say instead, made away with, etc. To make way is to make room, to provide a way, to dispatch. In our midst. The doctor settled in our midst. Say, among us, or in our neighborhood. Indorse or endorse. From the Latin dorsum, the back, these words have come to mean the writing of one's name across the back of a check, or draft, or other commercial paper, to signify its transfer to another, or to secure its payment. To indorse a man's argument or opinions is an incorrect use of the word. While both forms of spelling the word are in good usage, indorse seems to be coming into more general favor. In or into. In is often incorrectly used for into, as he hurried up the street and rushed in the store. We walk in a room when the walking is wholly within the apartment. We walk into a room when we enter it from some other room or from the outside. Just going to. I was just going to write you a letter. Say, I was just about to write you a letter. Kind of. James swallowed the dose and now feels kind of sick. Use slightly or somewhat or some other modifier instead of kind of. Knowing. Do not use knowing for skillful or intelligent. He is a knowing artist. See him prick up his ears. He is a knowing cur. Clever or smart. In England the word clever is applied to one who is bright, intelligent, ready, apt. In the United States it is often misapplied to one who is good-natured, kind, or accommodating. Do you believe in corporal punishment for stupid school children? Yes, a spanking always makes them smart. To express cleverness, brightness, intelligence, aptness, the adjectives clever, bright, intelligent, apt are better than the word smart. Posted or informed. He is well posted on all matters relating to cattle breeding. Say instead, informed. Perspire versus sweat. While all mankind belongs to the animal kingdom, and no person can feel offended at being called an animal, yet society observes certain distinctions in speaking of men and of beasts. To sweat and to feed are expressions that apply to the latter, to perspire and to eat to the former. Empty. The Mississippi River flows or discharges its water into the Gulf of Mexico, but it cannot empty so long as any water remains in the river. Enjoyed poor health. Gold that buys health can never be ill spent, nor hours laid out in harmless merriment. The negative form of expression, I have not enjoyed good health, is not only correct, but is, at the same time, a polite way of modestly stating a fact. To say, I have enjoyed poor health for the past year, is to express a kind of enjoyment not generally appreciated. It's like being agreeably disappointed. Aberration of intellect. He is afflicted with a slight aberration of intellect. Simplicity would suggest he's slightly insane. Above. Foregoing. Let me call your attention to the above passage. The highest authority does not sanction the use of above as an adjective. See, instead, say the foregoing passage. Allowed versus said. He allowed this was the best speech he had heard. This is a provincialism that should be avoided. Use said or declared or admitted according to the meaning. Alternation. This word is sometimes used in the sense of an unbroken series. It properly signifies a reciprocal succession, as the alternation of summer and winter produces an ever-changing scene. Alternative. Etymologically and by general use, this word refers to a choice between two, as if this demand is refused, the alternative is war. But Gladstone is quoted as saying, my decided preference is for the fourth and last of these alternatives. Anniversary. From annus, a year, means recurring every year. Centennial means once in 100 years. What, then, does centennial anniversary mean? Use centenary. Learn versus teach. I taught him grammar, not I learned him grammar. He taught us history. Lease or let or rent or hire. We may lease to or from. I leased the farm to my neighbor. I leased this house from Brown. We let to another, as I let my house to my cousin. We may rent to or from another. We may hire from another, as I hired a servant, he hired a boat. Without and reflexively we may hire to another, as I hired out my horses, he hired himself to the miller. Like and as. Avoid the use of like in the sense of as. He thinks just as, not like, his father does. That Anthony Trollope, Hugh Conway, and other writers are chargeable with this offense does not justify the use of like for as, but rather proves the need of constant vigilance in order to avoid such errors. Lit or lighted or alighted. He lighted the candle. The crow alighted on the top of the tree. Avoid the use of lit in such cases, and also that slang form as I lit on a beautiful passage in Browning in the sense of met with. Lend and loan. Will you lend me your book is better than will you loan me your book. Near or nearly. James is not near so good a scholar as his brother is. Instead, use nearly. Nasty versus nice. Nasty is a strong adjective and should be used only in reference to what is offensively filthy, foul, or defiled. Such expressions as a nasty day, a nasty rain, mark a loose and careless use of the word. The word nice once meant foolish, ignorant, weak, effeminate. It has now come to mean exact, fine, finished, exciting admiration on account of skill or exactness. As nice proportions, nice workmanship, a nice distinction in philosophy. It is loosely and colloquially used in application to what is pleasing, agreeable, delightful, good, A bright young lady was once asked, "Don't you think nice is a nasty word?" She replied, "And do you think nasty is a nice word?" The subject was abruptly changed. Nicely. How do you feel this morning? Nicely, thank you. The foregoing use of the word is as incorrect as it is common. Use very well instead. No good? No use. How does that new machine work? It's no good. Shall I try again? No, it's no use. The answers should have been, it's of no good, it is of no use. O and O, as in OH. While good usage is far from uniform, many excellent authors imply O, the letter O, only in cases of direct address, and OH when strong and sudden emotion is to be expressed. O is always written with a capital letter, and should be followed by the name of the person or thing addressed, and the exclamation or interrogation point placed at the end of the sentence, as letter O, death, where is thy sting? ? O grave, where is thy victory? O the cold and cruel winter. OH in the body of a sentence may begin with a small letter, and is immediately followed by the exclamation point, as OH! How terrible was his fate! The sad intelligence was gently given, but oh, the shock was almost unbearable. Observe and say. He observed that the orphan pines while the oppressor feeds. To observe is to notice carefully, to attend closely to what one sees. In the above sentence, said or remarked should be used instead of observed. Of any or of all. This is the largest tree of any I have seen. The meaning clearly is that of all the trees I have seen, this is the largest. Hence, of any should be changed to of all. Older versus elder. Elder and eldest are terms applied chiefly to persons, generally in speaking of members of the same family, while older and oldest are applied to persons of different families, and also to things. His elder brother died yesterday. His eldest sister has gone to Italy on her wedding trip. Our oldest neighbor was born in 1825. This oak is older than that pine. The foregoing sentences illustrate the best usage as applied to the comparatives older and elder, and the superlatives oldest and eldest. When the direct comparison is made, the word older is used, followed by the conjunction than, as my father is older than my mother, but when the comparison is assumed, the word elder should be employed, as my father is the elder of my parents. Only. Perhaps no other word in the language is so often misplaced as the word only. The only general rule is to place it as near as possible to the word which it modifies. He only lent me $1 means that he did not make me a present of the dollar, but expects me to return it. He lent me only $1 means that the sum lent was neither greater nor less than $1. The former expression is often used when the latter should be. Only the man walked to the post office today. The woman did not walk with him. The man only walked to the post office today. He did not ride or drive. The man walked only to the post office today. He did not go so far as the store. The man walked to the post office once only today. Yesterday he rode, and the day before he drove. Today is the only day that he walked. George Eliot in Middlemarch says, "I only know 2 gentlemen who sing at all well," and in another place, "I have only seen her once before." The word only should be placed before "to" in the first sentence, and before "once" in the second. On to. There is a growing tendency to write the words on and to as one word. Although nearly drowned, he yet had strength enough to climb onto the rock. The use of upon or on is generally better. When neither of these can be used, write on and to as separate words. Outstart. This word is sometimes used when outset should be employed. Over and above. He earned $20 over and above his expenses. Use more than or above. Party, person. Is she the party of whom you spoke? No, she is the person. One man may be a party to a contract or agreement. Several men may form a party. When no contract is implied, one man or woman must be spoken of as a person, not as a party. Patron or customer. Unless there is a sense of obligation or condescension, use the term customer and not patron. In like manner, use custom instead of patronage. Per. Per is a Latin preposition and should be used only with Latin nouns. We should say per annum, but not per year; per diem, and not per day; per capita, and not per head. He received $1,000 a year is shorter and better than he received $1,000 per year. Perchance, peradventure. These are poetic and archaic forms that should be avoided in ordinary prose. Performers. The entertainment consisted of reading, recitations, and singing, and the performers acquitted themselves well. Readers, reciters, and singers are not performers. The term is applied to the stage and to those who play on musical instruments. Even in the latter application, he plays well on the piano is better than he performs well on the piano. Period, or point. Do not use period for a point of time. Period implies extended time. Nothing like. James is nothing like so successful as his brother illustrates a colloquialism that should be avoided. Use not nearly so, etc. Notorious, or noted. He was elected to Congress, then governor, and we now think of sending him to the United States Senate. He is becoming quite notorious. The word notorious implies some bad or doubtful quality or characteristic, and must not be used in the sense of noted or famous. Nowhere near so. He trapped nowhere near so many rabbits as his cousin. This vulgarism should be avoided. Use not nearly. Plead. The past tense of read is read, but the past tense of plead is pleaded and not pled. The prisoner pleaded for mercy. Plenty, or plentiful. Money is plenty this summer. Plenty is a noun and should not be used as an adjective. Therefore, money is plentiful this summer. Shakespeare says, if reasons were as plenty as blackberries, etc., but words have settled into more definite grooves since Shakespeare's time. This house is plenty large enough. Neither is plenty an adverb. Say, this house is quite large enough, or simply large enough. About, or around. She was pleased with the conversation about her. Use around her. She was pained by the conversation about her. Use concerning her. Overlook and oversee. This word means to look down upon from a place that is over or above, as from the top of the Washington Monument you can readily overlook the city. But it is also meaning to look over and beyond an object in order to see a second object, thus missing the view of the first object. Hence, to refrain from bestowing notice upon, to neglect. The confounding of these two ideas begets ambiguity, as Brown's business was to overlook the workmen in the shop. His business was to oversee or superintend them, and not to neglect or overlook them. Revolting. To revolt is to rebel, to renounce allegiance, but the participial form, revolting, also means repugnant, loathsome. In the sentence, a band of revolting Huns has just passed down the street, we should be in doubt whether the speaker referred to their acts against the government or to their appearance. The use of the word rebellious in the former sense, and of disagreeable or disgusting, or the stronger adjectives given above, for the latter meaning, would make the sentence clear. Unexampled. Such adjectives as unexampled, unparalleled, unprecedented, do not admit of comparison, hence such expressions as the most unexampled bravery, the most unparalleled heroism, etc., should be avoided. Utter. This verb should be distinguished from express or say.
Utter carries with it the idea of articulate expression, except in the sense of uttering false coins or forged notes. As an adjective, it is defined by complete, perfect, absolute, but it can be applied only to what is unpleasant or unfavorable. I enjoyed utter happiness would be an absurd expression, but I was doomed to utter misery illustrates a proper use of the word. Valuable, valued. These words are not synonymous. Valuable means precious, costly, having value. Valued refers to our estimation of the worth. He is one of our most valued contributors, not valuable, unless you are thinking of the value of his contributions and the smallness of the compensation. Very pleased. A few participles used as adjectives may be directly modified by to or very, as I was very tired, or he was too fatigued to go farther. We should sometimes hear the expression, I was very pleased, but the critics insist upon I was very much pleased, or greatly pleased, or very greatly pleased. Vicinity, often too high sounding a word for the thought. Neighborhood is less pretentious. The old man. The use of such words as dad, daddy, ma'am, mammy, the old man, the old woman, when applied to parents, not only indicates a lack of refinement, but shows positive disrespect. The words pap, pappy, governor, etc., are also objectionable. After the first lispings of childhood, the words papa and mamma, properly accented, should be insisted upon by parents, and at the age of 12 or 15 the words father and mother should be substituted and ever after used, as showing a proper respect on the part of children. Great big. He gave me a great big apple. This is a colloquialism that should be avoided. Use large. Argue versus augur. The hollow whistling of the wind among the trees argues an approaching storm. Use augurs. Barbaric versus barbarous. Barbaric refers to a people, barbarous to their low state of life and their habits of cruelty. Cut in half. A colloquialism in very frequent use. I will cut this melon in half and share it with you. Say, cut in two, or cut in halves, or cut in two parts. Hearty meal. He ate a hearty meal before starting on his journey. Hearty applies to the eater rather than to the meal. He ate heartily, etc. Some better. John has been right sick, but he's now some better. Somewhat, rather, or slightly may take the place of some. The sentence may be otherwise improved. John has been quite ill, but is now somewhat better. Through, finished. Unless you have fallen through a trap door and finished your career, do not say, I am through, when you mean I have finished. The schoolboy says, I am through with that lesson, when he should say, I have finished that lesson. The farmer asks the man in his employ, Are you through with that field? When he should have asked, Have you finished plowing that field? You ask your friend, Are you through with Trilby? When you should ask, Have you finished reading Trilby? Winterish. Do not say summerish and winterish, but summery or summer-like and wintry. Wish. The word hope should be employed instead of wish, in such cases as, I wish you may succeed in your undertaking. Right. This little word has many meanings and is put to many uses. In the following senses it should be avoided. Stand right here. In most instances, the briefer expression stand here is sufficient. If it is necessary to locate the place more definitely, or to emphasize the position, stand just here, or stand on this very spot may be better. The train came to a standstill right here. Better, the train stopped just here. Do it right away. This is a colloquialism that should be avoided. Immediately, instantly, at once, without delay, are expressions that may safely be substituted for right away. I heard of your misfortune and came to you right away. John, post this letter for me right off. Directly or immediately in the place of right away and right off is better English. James is right sick, and the doctor comes to see him right often. The use of right as an intensive with adjectives and adverbs is very common in many quarters. quite ill or very ill is better than right sick, and often or frequently is better than right often. We have a right good crop of wheat this year. Use very instead of right. You have as good a right to be punished as I have. The person addressed would gladly relinquish his right. You merit punishment as well as I, or you deserve to be punished, etc. Shall, will, should, would. Few persons can claim to be entirely free from slips of speech in the use of these auxiliaries. Simply to express a future action or event, shall is used with the first person, and will with the second and third, as I shall read, we shall read, you will read, he will read, they will read. But when I desire to show determination on my part to do a certain thing, or when I exercise my authority over another, or express promise, command, or threat, will is used in the first person, and shall in the second and third, as in I will read, we will read, you shall read, he shall read, they shall read. Shall primarily implies obligation. Will implies intention or purpose. Will and would should be used whenever the subject names the one whose will controls the action. Shall and should must be employed whenever the one named by the subject is under the control of another. The difference between should and would is, in general, about the same as that between shall and will. The foregoing suggestions cover the ordinary uses of these auxiliaries, but there are some special cases deserving attention. Will, in the first person, expresses assent or promise, as well as determination, as I will read this poem for you, since you have requested it. I will meet you tomorrow at the time appointed. Will, in the second person, may express a command, as you will take the places assigned you. You will report immediately at my office. Will is sometimes employed to express a general fact, without conveying the idea of futurity, as accidents will happen, differences will arise. Will is sometimes incorrectly used instead of shall, as will I go for shall I go. This fault is common in Scotland, and prevails to some extent in this country. Will is also used wherever may be more appropriate, as be that as it will. Shall you? Will you? The distinction between shall and will in the interrogative forms of the second person are not very clearly defined. Many writers and speakers use them interchangeably. The answer should have the same auxiliary as the question. Shall you go to town tomorrow? I shall. Will you attend to this matter promptly? I will. Should, would, or ought. Should is often used in the sense of ought, as Mary should remain at home today and wait upon her sick mother. Should and would are employed to express a conditional assertion, as I should go to college if I could secure the necessary means. He would have gone fishing if his father had been willing. Would is often used to express a custom, a determination, or a wish, as he would sit all day and moan. Would to God we had died in the land of Egypt. He would go, and his parents could not prevent him. Talented. Certain authors and critics, including Coleridge, have objected strongly to the use of talented. One writer argues that since there is no such verb as to talent, the formation of such a participle as talented cannot be defended, and he further declares that no good writer is known to use it. Webster, the International Dictionary, states that as a formative, talented is just as analogical and legitimate as gifted, bigoted, moneyed, lauded, lilied, honeyed, and numerous other adjectives having a participial form, but derived directly from nouns and not from verbs. We must therefore conclude that the use of talented as an adjective is entirely legitimate. Climb down. The critics generally oppose the use of the expression climb down. When the verb is employed without its adverbial modifier, the upward direction is always understood. In figurative language, as black vapors climb aloft and cloud the day, the general climbed the heights of fame, the upward direction is also understood, but in a specific sense, climb is defined to mount laboriously, especially by the use of hands and feet. Here the manner seems to be as important as the direction. when the same manner must be employed in descending, as a tree, a mast, or a steep rocky cliff, the general term descend fails to convey the meaning, and to use slip, slide, drop, tumble, fall would be incorrect. We are then left to choose between the short and clear, but objectionable expression climb down, and some long and cumbersome equivalent. Mighty. Never use mighty in the sense of very or exceedingly. It's not only inappropriate, but inelegant. Of and from. She had consumption and died from the disease. Say, died of the disease. On, or over, or upon. Mary called upon her friend. Say, she called on her friend. The senator prevailed over his friends to support his bill. Say, prevailed upon his friends. The candidate prevailed over his enemies. Partake. This word means to take a part of, to share with another. It is often incorrectly used for ate, as he partook sparingly of the food. Powerful sight. This is a Westernism to be avoided. It is used indiscriminately for a large number, a great quantity, a vast amount, etc. Apprehend, comprehend. To apprehend is to take into the mind. To comprehend is to understand fully what is already there. We may apprehend many truths which we do not comprehend. Introduce, present. Present implies more formality than introduce. We introduce one friend to another. An envoy is presented to the king. Foreign ministers are presented to the President of the United States. Same, as. This is the same story as I read last week. Use same, that. Section. We raise finer horses in our section. This is an Americanism that should be avoided. Neighborhood, vicinity, region, part of the country, or state may be substituted for section. Seldom or ever. This incorrect expression is sometimes used instead of seldom or never, or seldom if ever. I have seldom if ever heard so eloquent an oration. I have seldom or never seen the man. Sewage versus sewerage. These words have distinct meanings. Sewage refers to the contents of the sewer, sewerage to the system of sewers. Sociable versus social. He's one of the most sociable men I've met. He is fond of society and is very ready in conversation. Sociable means companionable. Social applies to the relations of men in society, as social duties, social pleasures, social interests. Specialty, spécialité. These words are interchangeable, but the former is the better word. Requirement, requisition, requisite. While these words have something in common, each has a meaning peculiar to itself. Requirement means that which is required as an essential condition, or as something necessary. Requisition, that which is required as of right, a demand or application made as by authority. Requisite, that which is required by the nature of things or by circumstances, that which cannot be dispensed with. She understood the nature of the child and of its requirements. The officer made a requisition for more troops. This is as much a requisite as food and clothing. Sick or ill. There's a growing tendency to discriminate between sickness and illness, limiting the words sick and sickness to some slight disturbance of the physical system, as nausea, and applying the words ill and illness to protracted disease and disordered health. Scholar versus pupil. Although these words are often used synonymously and with good authority, it would be better to limit the former to learned persons and to apply the latter to persons under instruction. Commenced to write. I commenced to write at a very early age. After the verb commence, the best writers use the verbal noun instead of the infinitive with to, as I commenced writing at a very early age. Beside and besides. These words were formerly used interchangeably, but the best writers of today make a distinction. Beside means by the side of. Besides means in addition to. Besides is sometimes incorrectly used for except, as No trees will grow here besides the pine. Bountiful, plentiful. Bountiful applies to the giver, plentiful to the things furnished. The bountiful giver of all good furnishes a plentiful supply of all things needful for our comfort and happiness. Do not say a bountiful repast, or a bountiful harvest. Attacked, burst, or drowned. The incorrect past tense forms attacked, bursted, drowned are sometimes heard, as the cashier was attacked by 3 of the ruffians. The cannon bursted and killed the gunners. The fishermen were drowned off the bar. Instead, use attacked, burst, or drowned. All. This little word is used in a great many ways, some of which are quite colloquial, and in some cases provincial. When the grocer's clerk has taken your order, he is prompted to say, "Is that all?" Or, if he should say, "Is there anything else that you wish?" you are likely to reply, "No, that's all." Whether used in the question or in the reply, the word all should be avoided, or else the expression should be expanded so as to make a clear sentence. A friend calls to see you, and finding you alone when he expected to meet others with you, he says, "Good morning, I see you are all alone." All is not a good equivalent for quite or entirely, either of which words would be better than all. In truth, the sentence is as clear and as strong and more concise without the use of a modifier. I see you are alone. Inaugurate. To inaugurate means to induct into office, or to set in motion with formality and serious ceremony. Pompous writers too often employ the word in referring to commonplace events. A new business is established, a new hall or library is opened, a new pastor is installed, a new order of procedure is adopted. In general, the word begin or commence would be more appropriate than inaugurate. Came across, met with. I came across the passage quite unexpectedly. Better, I chanced upon, or happened upon, or met with the passage quite unexpectedly. Expect. Few words are more frequently incorrectly used than expect. I expect you went to town yesterday. I expect you will hear from me tomorrow. I expect the train has arrived. Represent some of the uses to which this word is often put. Expect refers wholly to the future, and should not refer to present or past events, as, I expect you to write me from Liverpool. John expects to see his father tomorrow. Among the expressions that can most readily and appropriately be substituted for expect are suspect, suppose, think, believe, presume, dare say. Over with. After the supper was over with, the guests departed. Omit the with. Overflown. The lowlands along the river are overflown. Use overflowed. The perfect participle of overflow is overflowed, not overflown. Good piece. I've come a good piece to see you. Say, I have come a long distance to see you. Stand a chance. He does not stand any chance of an election. Say, it's not probable that he will be elected. No more than I could help. As I was not in sympathy with the cause, I gave no more than I could help. As accustomed are we to hearing this awkward, blundering expression that we readily understand the meaning it's intended to convey, and should be sorely puzzled to interpret the correct form, let us analyze it. I gave $5. That much I could not help giving. I gave no more. Hence, I gave no more than I could not help. This last form appears to be correct. By changing the phraseology, the sentence can be greatly improved. I gave no more than I felt compelled to give. I made my contribution as small as possible. My gift was limited to the measure of my sense of obligation. Above, or more than, or preceding. It's above a week since I heard from my brother. We may say above the earth, above the housetops, but in the preceding sentence it is better to say, it's more than a week since I heard from my brother. In the above paragraph he quotes from Horace. Say, in the preceding or foregoing paragraph, etc. The awkwardness of the use of the word above becomes very apparent when the line in which it occurs is found at the top of a page, and the passage to which reference is made appears at the bottom of the previous page. Climax. The Greek word climax means literally a ladder, and implies ascent, upward movement. The best authors use it only in this sense, and not to denote the highest point. Factor. This word, from the Latin factor or doer, an agent, signifies working, doing, effecting. Its frequent use in the sense of source or part should be avoided. All are but factors of one stupendous whole, whose body nature is, and God the soul. Pope employs the better word parts. Hung versus hanged. Pictures, signs, bells, and other inanimate objects are hung, men are hanged. While some writers ignore this distinction, the best authorities observe it. Health versus healthful. A lady wrote to a paper asking, "Are plants in a sleeping room unhealthy?" The answer came, "Not necessarily. We have seen some very healthy plants growing in sleeping rooms." Persons are healthy or unhealthy. A plant or tree is healthy or unhealthy according as it possesses vigor. Food, surroundings, and conditions are healthful or unhealthful according as they promote or destroy health. Idea versus opinion. Many persons think that the interior of the earth is a mass of fire. What is your idea? Say, what is your opinion? Alone or only. An only child is one that has neither brother nor sister. A child alone is one that is left to itself. Virtue alone makes us happy means that virtue unaccompanied by any other advantages is sufficient to make us happy. Virtue only makes us happy means that nothing else can do it. Grow, or raise, or rear. We grow wheat, corn, oats, and potatoes on our farm. We raise wheat, etc., would be better. With the same propriety we might use sleep for lodge and eat for feed, or supply with food, as we can eat and sleep 50 persons at one time. The word raise is often incorrectly used in the sense of rear, as she raised a family of 9 children. It is sometimes employed in the sense of increase, as the landlord raised my rent. Increased would be better. Has went. He goes to school. He went to school yesterday. He has gone to the West. Avoid such ungrammatical forms as he has went, I have saw. Badly or greatly. Badly is often incorrectly used for greatly or very much, as I need it badly. He was badly hurt. That fence wants painting badly. I think I'll do it myself, said the economical husband. Yes, said his wife, you had better do it yourself if you think it wants to be done badly. At you. If you don't stop teasing me, I will do something at you, meaning I will punish you. That form of expression is very common in some localities, and it's even more inelegant than common. The use of the preposition to instead of at would be a slight improvement, but the sentence should be entirely recast. Haply versus happily. In the reading of the Scriptures, the word happily is sometimes used where the archaic word haply should be employed. In like manner, the word thoroughly is substituted for the old form thoroughly. Both words should be pronounced as they are spelt. Thanks. To say I thank you requires but little more effort than to say thanks, and it will be received as a more sincere token of thankfulness. Got to. This elegant expression is often employed where must would serve the purpose better. This work has got to be done. Say must be done. Hangs on. The cold weather hangs on. Better, the cold weather continues. Under the weather. Are you well? No, I've been quite under the weather. Substitute sick or ill for the colloquial expression under the weather. Again versus against. Again is often erroneously used for against, as he leaned again the tree for support. Say, he leaned against the tree for support. Could, can, and will. Could is often incorrectly employed where can or will would be more appropriate. Could you lend me $1 this morning? If the thought of the inquirer is, are you willing to lend, etc., He should have used will instead of could, but if his thought was, "Are you able to lend?" or "Do you have $1 to spare this morning?" he should have used can. Bravery versus courage. Bravery is inborn; courage is the result of reason and determination. The brave are often reckless; the courageous are always cautious. Hate. Avoid the use of hate for dislike and all other intensive words when the thought is more correctly expressed by a milder word. Pretty, very. Pretty is often incorrectly used in the sense of very or moderately, as "He was pretty badly hurt." "He is a pretty good scholar." "She's pretty wealthy." "Thomas is pretty ugly." So common is this provincialism in some localities that the incongruity of such an expression as the last would pass undiscovered. Lot versus number. The use of lot for number or many is a colloquialism that should be avoided. He collected a lot (large number) of books on the subject. A lot of policemen were gathered there. I ate lots of oranges while I was in Florida. Lead a dance. He led his companion a fine dance. This expression, as generally used, is ironical, and implies that the leader conducts those who are led through experiences unfamiliar to them, and usually to their disadvantage. To lead astray, to deceive, to corrupt the morals of, may be substituted for the foregoing inelegant expression. Try and. Have you been to the country this summer? No, but I will try and go next week. The second speaker intends to convey the idea that it is his purpose to go if nothing occurs to prevent, but his going is still a matter of uncertainty. His statement, however, when properly interpreted, means that he not only will try, but he positively will go. Try and finish that work today. Here the purpose is not to command that the work shall be finished, but that the trial shall be made. As the sentence stands, two distinct commands are given: first, that the trial shall be made, and second, that the work must be completed. The sentence should read, "Try to finish that work today." Use to instead of and in such expressions as, "Try and make it convenient to come." "Try and do your work properly." "Try and think of your lessons." "Try and go and see your sick neighbor." End of Slips of Speech, Chapter 2, Part 2, by John H. Bechtel. Read by Mike Harris. Slips of Speech, by John H. Bechtel, Chapter 3, read for the LibriVox Language Learning Collection, Volume 2. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Slips of Speech, by John H. Bechtel, Chapter 3. Whatever may be said against employing contractions in dignified discourse, their use in colloquial speech is too firmly established to justify our censure. But in their use, as indeed in the use of all words, proper discrimination must be shown. Just why haven't, hasn't, doesn't, isn't, wasn't are regarded as being in good repute, and ain't, weren't, mightn't, oughtn't are regarded with less favor, and why shalln't, willn't are absolutely excluded, it would be difficult to explain. Use determines the law of language, whether for single words, grammatical forms, or grammatical constructions. Wherever a people, by common consent, employ a particular word to mean a certain thing, that word becomes an inherent part of the language of that people, whether it has any basis in etymology or not. We must not wrest this law to our own convenience, however, by assuming that such words and phrases as are introduced and employed by the illiterate, or even by the educated, within a circumscribed territory, are therefore to be regarded as reputable words. The sanction of all classes, the educated as well as the uneducated, throughout the entire country in which the language is spoken, is necessary and preliminary to the proper introduction of a new word into the language. Ain't. This word is a contraction of am not or are not, and can therefore be used only with the singular pronouns I and you, and with the plural pronouns we, you, and they, and with nouns in the plural. I am not pleased. I ain't pleased. You are not kind. You ain't kind. They are not gentlemen. They ain't gentlemen. These sentences will serve to illustrate the proper use of ain't, if it is ever proper to use such an inelegant word as that. James ain't a good student. Mary ain't a skillful musician, or this orange ain't sweet, are expressions frequently heard, yet those who use them would be shocked to hear the same expressions with the proper equivalent am not or are not substituted for the misleading ain't. The expression ain't is compounded of the verb am or are and the adverb not, and by the contraction the three vocal impulses I am not, or you are not, or they are not, are reduced to two. By compounding the pronoun with the verb and preserving the full adverb, as in I'm not, you're not, they're not, we also reduce the three vocal impulses to two, thus securing as short a contraction in sound, and one that is as fully adapted to colloquial speech, and that is at the same time in much better taste. The old form for ain't was ant, but this has now become obsolete. It will be a blessing to the English-speaking people when the descendant shall sleep with his father. Are not is sometimes contracted into aren't, but this form has not found much favor. Can't and couldn't. As cannot and could not may be used with pronouns of the first, second, or third person in either number, and with nouns in both numbers, no error is likely to follow the use of their contracted forms. Why cannot is properly written as one word, and could not requires two, is not founded upon any principle of philosophy. The concurrent sanction of all classes in all parts of the English-speaking world establishes it as law. Observe that the a in the verb can't is broader in sound than the short a in the noun can't. Don't and didn't. Don't is a contraction of do not. It's in very general use and in good repute. It may be employed wherever the expanded expression do not could be applied, and only there. One swallow don't make a spring is equivalent to saying one swallow do not make a spring. We may say I don't, you don't, we don't, they don't, the men or birds or trees don't, but we must use doesn't with he or she or it, or the man, the grove, the cloud, etc. Unlike the verb do, its past tense form did undergoes no change in conjugation, hence the contraction didn't is also uniform. Haven't, hasn't, and hadn't. The verb have, like the verb do, has a distinct form for the third person singular. The same change affects the contraction I haven't, you haven't, he hasn't. The construction hadn't undergoes no change. Hain't or tain't. Hain't is used indiscriminately for haven't and hasn't. Tain't is used for tisn't. Their use is indicative of an entire lack of culture. Isn't. No one need hesitate to use this word. It is smooth in utterance and contributes much to the freedom and ease of social intercourse. Its equivalent is too stately for colloquial forms of speech, and is often suggestive of pedantry. Compare, isn't he an eloquent speaker, with isn't this a beautiful flower, with is not he an eloquent speaker, is this not a beautiful flower? Wasn't. Although not so elegant as the present tense form isn't, yet the contraction wasn't is in excellent repute. It is properly used only in the first and third persons singular. No one who makes any pretension to culture would be guilty of saying, you was my neighbor, but you wasn't my friend. We was engaged in trade, and they wasn't of any use to us. Say, we were or were not, but never wasn't or want. W-A''Nt. Weren't. The forms aren't and weren't do not have the sanction of the best speakers and writers, and should be used sparingly, if at all. Shouldn't and wouldn't. These are frequently used in speech, but are not so common in writing. Mustn't, mayn't, mightn't, and oughtn't. Mustn't may be used in light conversation, but not in writing. The others should be avoided in speech and writing. I'm, you're, he's, she's, it's, we're, they're. The contractions formed by compounding the pronoun with the verb are very common, and tend to preserve the conversation from becoming stiff and formal. Nouns in the singular are sometimes compounded in like manner, as John's going by the early train, Mary's caught a bird. Not many verbs besides is and has are thus compounded, and the practice should be discouraged. Mayst, mightst. Although mayst, canst, mightst, couldst, wouldst, and shouldst are contracted forms, the apostrophe is not employed to indicate the contraction. Daren't, dursn't. Dare not is sometimes contracted to daren't, and durst not to dursn't, but the practice should not be encouraged. Let's. While verbs are often contracted when compounded with pronouns, as it's, he's, I'm, you're, etc., the pronoun must not be contracted to form a combination with the verb. It may be a poor rule, but it will not work both ways. Let's should, therefore, be let us. End of Slips of Speech, Chapter 3, by John H. Bechtel, read by Mike Harris. Slips of Speech, by John H. Bechtel, Chapter 4, read for the LibriVox Language Learning Collection, Volume 2. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Chapter 4, Possessive Case. Some time ago, a shoe merchant called upon the writer to know how to arrange the points in the wording of a new sign that he was preparing to place over his door. The merchant made a specialty of shoes for men and boys. He presented a paper containing the lines men's, men', and boys', boys', shoes, and on the second line mens' and boys' shoes. He was politely informed that both were actually incorrect, that the two words form their plurals differently, and that the possessive case is therefore formed in a different manner. The plural of man is men, the plural of boy is boys. The possessive of man is mans, man', of men is men'. The possessive of boy is boys', of boys is boys'. In the latter case we are obliged to place the apostrophe after the s in order to distinguish the possessive plural from the possessive singular. All nouns that form their plurals by adding s to the singular form their possessive case as the word boy does. The sign should therefore read men' and boys', shoes. Singular nouns. All nouns in the singular form their possessive case by adding the apostrophe and the letter s, as in child's, d's, girls, woman's, birds, brothers, sisters, judges, sailors. When the noun ends in s, sh, ch, ce, or x, the additional s makes another syllable in pronouncing the word, as James's, Charles's, witnesses, duchesses, countesses, rushes, marches, princes, horses, foxes. In poetry, the terminal s is sometimes omitted for the sake of the meter. While writers differ, the tendency in modern usage is toward the additional s in such expressions as Mrs. Hemans's poems, Junius's letters, Knowles's Virginius,
Knox's Sermons, Brooks's Arithmetics, Rogers's Essays. That works when you write it, but it doesn't work when you say it. By long established usage, such expressions as for conscience sake, for righteousness sake, for goodness sake, for Jesus' sake have become idioms. Some authorities justify the omission of the possessive s when the next word begins with s, as in Archimedes' screw, Achilles' sword. Plural nouns. Most nouns form their plurals by adding s or es to the singular. These plurals form their possessive by adding the apostrophe s. Horses, ses apostrophe, countesses, foxes, churches, princes. Nouns whose plurals are formed otherwise than by adding s or es form their possessive case by adding the apostrophe and s, just as nouns in the singular do, as men's, men apostrophe s, women's, children's, seraphims. Pronouns. Sometimes the mistake is made of using the apostrophe with the possessive personal pronouns, as hers, her apostrophe s, ours, our apostrophe s, its, it apostrophe s. The personal and relative pronouns do not require the apostrophe, but the indefinite pronouns, one and other, form their possessives in the same manner as nouns, as each others, r''s, eyes, 100 others, others, woes. Double possessives. John and Mary's, Mary''s, sled, means one sled belonging jointly to John and Mary. John's and Mary's sleds mean that one sled belongs to John, the other to Mary. Men, women, and children's shoes for sale here. When several possessives connected by and refer to the same noun, the sign of the possessive is applied to the last one only. When a disjunctive word or words are used, the sign must be annexed to each word, as these are Charles's or James's books. Possessive of nouns in apposition. When two nouns are in apposition or constitute a title, the possessive sign is affixed to the last, as for David my servant's sake, give me here John the Baptist's head in a charger. The Prince of Wales's yacht, Frederick the Great's kindness. After of. By a peculiarity of idiom, the possessive sign is used with a noun in the objective, as this is a story of Lincoln's, that is a letter of the President's, a patient of Dr. Butler's, a pupil of Professor Ludlam's. In ordinary prose, the custom of the best writers is to limit the use of the possessive chiefly to persons and personified objects, to time expressions, as an hour's delay, r''s, a moment's thought, and to such idioms as for brevity's sake. Avoid such expressions as America's champion baseball player, Chicago's best 5-cent cigar, Lake Michigan's swiftest steamer, somebody else's, else''s. The question whether we should say this is somebody's else pencil or this is somebody else's pencil has been warmly argued by the grammarians, the newspapers, and the schools. If some leading journal or magazine were to write somebody else as one word, others would doubtless follow, and the question of the possessive would settle itself. The word notwithstanding is composed of three separate words, which are no more closely united in thought than are the three words some, buddy, and else. Two of the latter are already united, and the close mental union of the third with the first and second would justify the innovation. But the words are at present disunited. A majority of the best writers still conform to the old custom of placing the possessive with else. People are so ridiculous with their illusions, carrying their fool's caps unawares, thinking of their own lies opaque, while everybody else's were transparent. So wrote George Eliot.
Some make a distinction by placing the possessive with else when the noun follows, and with somebody when the noun precedes, as, "This is somebody else's pencil," and "This pencil is somebody's else." This distinction is not generally followed. End of Slips of Speech, Chapter 4, by John H. Bechtel, read by Mike Harris. Slips of Speech, by John H. Bechtel, Chapter 5, read for the LibriVox Language Learning Collection, Volume 2. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Chapter 5, Pronouns. The correct use of pronouns, personal and relative, involves a degree of skill which many speakers and writers fail to possess. The choice of the appropriate pronoun, the agreement with its antecedent, the proper case form, are matters which require careful consideration. Case forms. Following am, are, is, was, and other forms of the verb to be, the pronoun must be in the nominative case. Are you the person that called? Yes, I am him. The answer should have been, I am he. I saw a man trespassing on my grounds, and I think you are him. Say, you are he. It's only me. Don't be afraid. It is only I is the correct form. It was him that struck you, not me. Change him to he and me to I. It might have been him that sent you the present. Use he, not him. It is him who you said it was. The sentence should be, it is he who you said it was. That was but a picture of him, and not him himself. Say, and not he himself. After verbs and prepositions. When a pronoun depends upon a verb or a preposition, the pronoun must be in the objective case. Between you and I, that picture is very faulty. The pronouns you and I depend upon the preposition between. The pronoun I should therefore be in the objective case, and the sentence should be between you and me. That picture is very faulty. The president of the meeting appointed you and I upon the committee. As both pronouns are objects of the transitive verb appointed, both should be in the objective case. You have the same form in the objective as in the nominative, is therefore correct, but I should be changed to me. The teacher selected he and I to represent the class. The pronouns are the objects of the verb selected, and should be changed to him and me. The infinitive to represent, like other infinitives, can have no subject, and therefore does not control the case of the pronouns. Interrogatives. When a question is asked, the subject is usually placed after the verb, or between the auxiliary and the verb, as, did you go to town? Will he sail today? Has your uncle arrived? Hearest thou thy mother's call? The object or attribute of the verb, when a pronoun, is often used to introduce the sentence. Who should I see coming toward me but my old friend? Who should be whom, for it is the object and not the subject of the verb should see. Whom do you think that tall gentleman is? Whom should be who, as it is the attribute of the verb is. Who do you take me for? Being the object of the preposition for, who should be whom. After to be. I knew it was him is incorrect, because the word which forms the pronoun attribute of the verb was must be in the nominative case, but the infinitive of the neuter verb requires the objective case. Therefore, we must say, I knew it to be him, not I knew it to be he. The latter faulty form is very frequently employed. Who do you suppose it to be? Incorrect. Say, whom did you suppose it to be? Whom did you suppose it was? Is also incorrect. Say, who did you suppose it was? After the imperative. The imperative mood requires the objective case after it. Let you and I try it. It should be, let you and me try it. Let who made thee answer that. From Byron. Byron should have said, let him who made thee answer that. Let him be whom he may. Him is the objective after the imperative let, and is correct. Whom should be who, as pronoun attribute of the verb may be. Who he may be, I cannot tell, is correct. Who he may be, let him be, is also correct. By transposing and by omitting be, we have let him be who he may. Let the sea roar and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. When, as in this case, the verb is widely separated from its object, we need to give particular care to the case of the pronoun which constitutes the object. They should be them. Silent predicate. Who will go with us to the woods? Me. The complete answer would be, me will go with you to the woods, the faultiness of which is evident. The answer should be, I. Who will go with us to the woods? I. After then and as, the objective pronoun is often incorrectly used for the nominative after then or as. He can swim better than me. The complete sentence would be, he can swim better than I can swim. The omission of the verb can swim affords no reason for changing I to me. He is no better than me. Say, he is no better than I, meaning I am. They are common people, such as you and me. Such people as you and I are. The pronoun should be I, not me. Parenthetical expressions. When a parenthetical expression comes between a pronoun in the nominative case and its verb, the objective is often incorrectly used instead of the nominative. She sang for the benefit of those whom she thought might be interested. The explanatory parenthesis she thought comes between the pronominal subject and its verb, might be interested. Omit the explanatory clause, and the case of the pronoun becomes clear. She sang for the benefit of those who might be interested. Agreement with antecedent. A pronoun must agree with its antecedent in gender, person, and number. The gender and person usually take care of themselves, but the number of pronouns is a serious obstacle to correct speech. One tells the quality of their minds when they try to talk well. George Eliot wrote in Middlemarch. The pronouns their and they should be singular. Everybody has something to say which they think is worthy of being heard. Everybody refers to persons singly and not collectively. They think should be he thinks, he being the proper pronoun to employ when the gender is not indicated. Every nation has laws and customs of their own. The use of the word every necessitates a pronoun in the singular, hence there should be its. Everyone is accountable for their own acts. Use his for his own acts. She studied his countenance like an inscription, and deciphered each rapt expression that crossed it, and stored them in her memory. Change them to it. Stored it in her memory. Each of them in their turn received the reward to which they were entitled. This should be, each of them in his turn received the reward to which he was entitled. No and not, like each and every, when they qualify a plural antecedent, or one consisting of two or more nouns, require a pronoun in the singular. No policeman, no employee, no citizen dared to lift their hand. Say, lift his hand. Or and nor. When the antecedent consists of two or more nouns separated by or, nor, as well as, or any other disjunctive, The pronoun must be singular. Neither spelling nor parsing receive the attention they once received. Verb and pronoun should be singular, receives, and it. Collective noun. When a noun of multitude or collective noun is the antecedent, the pronoun, like the verb, must be plural or singular, according to the sense intended to be conveyed. Ambiguity. Never leave the antecedent of your pronoun in doubt. John tried to see his father in the crowd, but could not because he was so short. If the father was short, repeat the noun and omit the pronoun, as John tried to see his father in the crowd, but could not because his father was so short. If John was short, recast the sentence. John, being short of stature, tried in vain to see his father in the crowd. He said to his friend that if he did not feel better soon, he thought he had better go home. This sentence is susceptible of 4 interpretations. We shall omit the first part of the sentence in the last 3 interpretations, as it is the same in all. He said to his friend, "If I do not feel better soon, I think I had better go home. If I do not feel better soon, I think you had better go home. If you do not feel better soon, I think I had better go home. If you do not feel better soon, I think you had better go home." The lad cannot leave his father, for if he should leave him he would die. To avoid ambiguity, substitute his father for the pronouns that were italicized in the script. The lad cannot leave his father, for should the father leave him, the father would die. The repetition is not pleasant, but it's the lesser of 2 evils. Needless pronouns. Avoid all pronouns and other words that are not essential to the meaning. The father he died, the mother she soon followed after, and the children they were all taken down sick. Let everyone turn from his or her evil ways. Unless there is a special reason for emphasizing the feminine pronoun, avoid the awkward expression his or her. The pronoun his includes the other. Mixed pronouns. Do not use 2 styles of the pronoun in the same sentence. Enter thou into the joy of your Lord. Love thyself last, and others will love you. Them and those. It should not be necessary to caution the reader against the use of them for those. Fetch me them books. Did you see them fat oxen? Them's good. I'll take another dish. Which and who. Those which say so are mistaken. Who is applied to persons, which to the lower animals and to inanimate things. He has some friends which I know. Whom, the objective case form of the pronoun who, should here be used. The dog who was called Rover went mad. Use which. The dog which was called Rover. What and that. That is applied to persons, animals, and things. What is applied to things. The antecedent of what should not be expressed. What is both antecedent and relative. All what he saw he described. Say, what he saw, or all that he saw, etc. Uniform relatives. When several relative clauses relate to the same antecedent, they should have the same relative pronoun. It was Joseph that was sold into Egypt, who became governor of the land, and which saved his father and brothers from famine. Change that and which to who. Choice of relatives. Since who and what are both applied to persons, and which and that are both applied to animals and things, it often becomes a serious question which relative we shall employ. Much has been written upon the subject, but the critics still differ in theory and in practice. The following is probably as simple a statement of the general rule as can be found. If the relative clause is of such a nature that it could be introduced by and he, and she, and it, and they, etc., the relative who for persons, and which for animals or things, should be used in preference to the relative that. Man that is born of woman is of few days and full of trouble. The language of the Bible and of Shakespeare must stand, although the forms of expression differ greatly from those employed at the present day. According to modern standards, that should be who. The earth is enveloped by an ocean of air that's a compound of oxygen and nitrogen. Change that to which. The relative that should be used in preference to who, or which, when the antecedent names both persons and things, when it would prevent ambiguity. The relative that should be used in preference to who, or which, 1. When the antecedent names both persons and things. 2. When it would prevent ambiguity. 3. After the words same, very, and all. 4. After the interrogative pronoun who. And 5. After adjectives expressing quality in the highest degree, i.e., the wisest men who ever lived made mistakes. Use that. See number 5. He lived near a stagnant pool which was a nuisance. Use that. See number 2. All who knew him loved him. Say that. See number 3. Who saw him did not pity him. See 4. He spake of the men and things which he had seen. See number 1. These are my pupils which I have brought to see you. Use whom, as which is not applied to persons. These are my pupils whom I have brought to see you. This is the window whose panes were broken by the rude boys. Use the panes of which, because of its convenience, perhaps. The faulty whose is very largely used, as the eagle whose wings, the house whose gables, the ocean whose waves, the vessel whose sails, the play whose chief merit, music whose chief attraction, etc. Which and who after and. Which and who cannot follow, and unless there has been a preceding which or who in the same sentence and in the same construction. The more important rules, definitions, and observations, and which are therefore the most proper to be committed to memory, are printed with a large type. That's in Murray's Grammar. In Moore's Bad English the sentence is corrected thus: the rules, definitions, and observations which are the more important, and which are therefore the most proper to be committed to memory, are printed in larger type. Adverbs for relative pronouns. Adverbs are often employed where a preposition with a relative pronoun would better express the sense. There is no method known how his safety may be assured. Use by which instead of how. He wrote me a letter where he repeated his instructions. Letter in which he repeated, etc. And curse the country where their fathers dwelt, in which their fathers dwelt. This is a case where large interests are involved. The preposition and relative will better express the meaning, as this is a case in which large interests are involved. Misplaced relative. The relative should be so placed as to prevent ambiguity, and as near as possible to its antecedent. Mr. Smith needs a surgeon who has broken his arm. Say, Mr. Smith who has broken his arm. The figs were in small wooden boxes, which we ate. The figs which we ate, etc. He needs no boots that cannot walk. He that cannot walk, etc. Omitted relatives. The relative pronoun is often omitted when it should be expressed. The next falsehood he told was the worst of all. Say instead, the next falsehood that he told. It is little we know of the divine perfections. Say, little that we know. Almost all the irregularities in the construction of any language have arisen from the ellipsis of some words which were originally inserted in the sentence and made it regular. Murray's Grammar. The sentence should end with and which made it regular. The one and the other. When the one and the other refer to things previously mentioned, the one applies to the first mentioned, and the other to the last mentioned. Homer was a genius, Virgil an artist. In the one we most admire the man, in the other the work. End of Slips of Speech, Chapter 5, by John H. Bechtel, read by Mike Harris. Slips of Speech, by John H. Bechtel, Chapter 6, read for the LibriVox Language Learning Collection, Volume 2. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Chapter 6, Number. Many persons of moderate education regard nouns that do not end with s or es as singular. Even the gifted pen of Addison once slipped so far as to betray him into using the word seraphim in the singular. Cherubim and seraphim. The word cherub and seraph are singular. Cherub, as applied to a little child, takes the English plural cherubs. As applied to an order of angels, it takes the Hebrew plural cherubim. The singular seraph has an English plural seraphs, as well as the Hebrew plural seraphs. The double plurals cherubims and seraphims, although found in the King James Version of the Bible, are regarded as faulty in modern writing and should be avoided. News. Although plural in form, the word news is singular in meaning. The news from Europe this morning is quite interesting. Acoustics. Names of sciences ending in ICS are generally regarded as singular. Acoustics is a very considerable branch of physics. Do not say, the acoustics of this hall are good, but the acoustic properties of this hall are good. Dialectics, dynamics, economics, mathematics, ethics, politics, tactics, when used as substantives, require a verb in the singular. Analysis. Many words like analysis, crisis, ellipsis, emphasis, hypothesis, oasis, parenthesis, synopsis form their plurals by changing the termination is into es, as analyses, crises, etc. The word iris takes the English plural irises. Latin plural is irides. Chrysalis has only the Latin plural chrysalides, but chrysalid, which means the same as chrysalis, takes the English plural chrysalids. Terminus. Terminus, radius, alumnus, and some other words ending in us form their plurals by changing the termination us into I, as termini, radii, etc. Many words ending in us that formerly were written with only the Latin plural are now given an English plural also, as focuses, foci, cactuses, cacti, sarcophaguses, sarcophagi, convolvuluses, convolvuli, funguses, fungi, nucleuses, nuclei. Isthmus, prospectus, rebus take only the English plural. Apparatus has no plural. Avoid apparatuses. The plural of genius, as applied to a man of unusual vigor of mind, is geniuses. When applied to a good or bad spirit, the plural is genii. Formula. Formulas, larvas, stigmas are regular English plurals. Formulae, larvae, and stigmata are the classical plurals. Nebulae and alumni are the proper plurals, the latter being the feminine noun corresponding to the masculine plural alumni. Datum and phenomenon. Datum, erratum, candelabrum, and memorandum form their plurals by changing to a, as data, errata, etc. The last two also take the English plurals, memorandums, candelabrums. The plural of phenomenon and criterion are phenomena, criteria, although criterions is sometimes employed. The plural forms, data, strata, and phenomena, are so much more frequently used than their singular forms, datum, stratum, and phenomenon, that some writers have slipped into the habit of using the plurals with a singular meaning, as the aurora borealis is a very strange phenomena. Our data is insufficient to establish a theory. The strata is broken and irregular. Mussulmans. While most words ending in man become plural by changing this termination to men, as gentleman, nobleman, clergyman, statesman, the following simply add s: dragomans, mussulmans, ottomans, talismans. A dozen dragomans offered their services as guides and interpreters. A band of Mussulmans cut off our retreat. Those fierce Ottomans proved to be very revengeful. He purchased 5 finely upholstered ottomans for his drawing room. Heroes, cantos. Most nouns ending in o add es to form the plural, as heroes, negroes, potatoes, stuccos, manifestos, mosquitoes. Words ending in io or yo add s, as folios, nuncios, oleos, ratios, embryos. The following words, being less frequently used, often puzzle us to know whether to add s or es to form the plural: armadillos, cantos, cuckoos, halos, thuntos, octavos, provisos, salvos, solos, twos, twos, tyros, virtuosos. Alms and odds and riches. Many nouns that end in s have a plural appearance, and we're often perplexed to know whether to use this or these, and whether to employ a singular or a plural verb when the noun is used as a substantive. Amends is singular. Assets, dregs, eaves, bees, pincers, riches, scissors, shears, tongs, vitals are plural. When we say a pair of pincers, or a pair of scissors, or shears, or tongs, the verb should be singular. Tidings, in Shakespeare's time, was used indiscriminately with a singular or plural verb, but is now generally regarded as plural. Alms and headquarters are usually made plural, but are occasionally found with a singular verb. Pains is usually singular. Means, odds, and species are singular or plural according to the meaning. By this means he accomplished his purpose. What other means is left to us? Your means are very slender, and your waist is great. Proper names. These are usually pluralized by adding s, as the Stuarts, the Caesars, the Beechers, the Brownings. Titles with proper names. Shall we say the Miss Browns, the Mrs. Brown, or the Mrs. Browns? Great diversity of opinion prevails. Gould Brown says, the name and not the title is varied to form the plural, as the Miss Howards, the 2 Mr. Clarks. Alexander Bain, LL.D., says, we may say the Mrs. Brown, or the Miss Browns, or even the Mrs. Browns. The chief objection to the last 2 forms is found when the proper name ends with s, as when we say the Miss Brookses, the Miss Joneses, the Miss Pottses, the Miss Blisses. The form the Mrs. Brooks is objecting to by some on the ground that it sounds affected. On the whole, the rule given by Gould Brown is the best, and is quite generally observed. Knight Templar. Both words are made plural. Knights Templars, a very unusual way of forming the plural. Plural compounds. The plural sign of a compound word is affixed to the principal part of the word, to the part that conveys the predominant idea, as fathers-in-law, manservants, outpourings, ingatherings. In such words as handfuls, cupfuls, mouthfuls, the plural ending is added to the subordinate part, because the ideas are so closely associated as to blend into one another. Beaux, Beaus, and Beaux. Some words ending in eau have only the English plurals, as bureaus, portmanteaus. Others take both the English and the French plurals, as beaux, eaus, and beaux. Flambeaux, flambeau with an x, plateaus, plateaus with an x, and still others take only the foreign plural, as in bateaux, chateau, tableau. Pair and couple and brace. After numerals, the singular form of such words as these is generally employed, as 5 pair of gloves, 8 couple of dancers, 3 brace of pigeons, 5 dozen of eggs, fourscore years, 20 sail of ships, 50 head of cattle, 600 of these men, 2,000 of these cattle, etc. After such indefinite adjectives as few, many, several, some of the above words take the plural form, as several hundreds, many thousands. Index and appendix. Indices of books, indices if applied to mathematical signs and algebra, appendixes or appendices. Fish and fly. The plural of fishes, fishes when considered individually, and fish when considered collectively. My 3 pet fishes feed out of my hand. 6 barrels of fish were landed from the schooner. Most words ending in y change this termination into ies, as duties, cities, etc. The plural of fly, the insect, is formed in the usual manner, but fly, a light carriage, adds s, as 6 flies carried the guests to their homes. Animalcule. The plural of this word is animalcules. There is no plural animalculi. The plural of the Latin animalculum is animalculi. Bandit. This word has 2 plural forms, bandits and banditti. Brother. Plural brothers when referring to members of the same family, brethren when applied to members of the same church or society. Die. Plural is dies. When the stamp with which seals are impressed is meant, dice, the cubes used in playing backgammon. Herring. The plural is herrings, but shad, trout, bass, pike, pickerel, grayling have no plural form. I caught 3 bass and 7 fine pickerel this morning. Grouse. The names of game birds, as grouse, quail, snipe, woodcock, usually take no plural form. Pea. Considered individually, the plural is peas. When referring to the crop, the proper form is peas, P-E-A-S-E. Penny. He gave me 12 bright new pennies, referring to the individual coins. I paid him 12 pence, meaning a shilling. Wharf. Plural, generally wharves in America, wharfs in England. End of Slips of Speech, Chapter 6, by John H. Bechtel, read by Mike Harris.
Slips of Speech, Chapter 7, by John H. Bechtel. Read for the LibriVox Language Learning Collection, Volume 3. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Ashley Jane. Chapter 3. Adverbs. The clearness of the sentence is often dependent upon the proper placing of the adverb. No absolute rule can be laid down, but it should generally be placed before the word it qualifies. It is sometimes necessary to place it after the verb, and occasionally between the auxiliary and the verb, but it should never come between to and the infinitive. I have thought of marrying often. As the adverb relates to the thinking and not to the marrying, the sentence should read, I have often thought of marrying. We have often occasion to speak of health. This should be, we often have occasion, etc. It remains then undecided whether we shall go to Newport or Saratoga. Place undecided before then. Adjective or adverb. There is often a doubt in the mind of the speaker whether to use the adjective or the adverb, and too frequently he reaches a wrong decision. When the limiting word expresses a quality or state of the subject or of the object of a verb, the adjective must be employed. But if the manner of the action is to be expressed, the adverb must be used. The verbs be, seem, look, taste, smell, and feel furnish many stumbling blocks. This rose smells sweetly. As the property or quality of the rose is here referred to, and not the manner of smelling, the adjective sweet should be employed, and not the adverb sweetly. Thomas feels quite badly about it. Here, again, it is the condition of Thomas's mind, and not the manner of feeling, that is to be expressed. Hence badly should be bad or uncomfortable. Didn't she look beautifully upon the occasion of her wedding? No, she looked beautiful. The sun shines brightly. Bright is the better word. The child looks cold refers to the condition of the child. The lady looked coldly upon her suitor refers to the manner of looking. The boy feels warm is correct. The boy feels warmly the rebuke of his teacher is equally correct. While license is granted to the poets to use the adjective for the adverb, as in the line, "They fall successive and successive rise," in prose the one must never be substituted for the other. Agreeably to my promise, I now write, not agreeable to my promise. An awful solemn funeral should be an awfully solemn funeral. He acts bolder than was expected should be he acts more boldly. Helen was awful sick, but she is now considerable better. Helen has been very ill, but she is now considerably better. Do not use coarser for more coarsely, finer for more finely, harsher for more harshly, conformable for conformably, decided for decidedly, distinct for distinctly, fearful for fearfully, fluent for fluently. Do not say, "This melon is uncommon good," but "This melon is uncommonly good." The word ill is both an adjective and an adverb. Do not say, "He can illy afford to live in such a house," but "He can ill afford." That was a dreadful solemn sermon. To say, "That was a dreadfully solemn sermon," would more grammatically express what the speaker intended, but very or exceedingly would better express the meaning. Such, so. Such is often improperly used for the adverb so. In such a mild and healthful climate. This should be in so mild and healthful a climate. With all due reference to such a high authority on such a very important matter. Change to with all due deference to so high an authority on so very important a matter. Good, well. Many intelligent persons carelessly use the adjective good in the sense of the adverb well, as "I feel good to day." "Did you sleep good last night?" "Does this coat look good enough to wear on the street?" "I can do it as good as he can." The frequent indulgence in such errors dulls the sense of taste and weakens the power of discrimination. Very much of. She is very much of a lady. Say, "She is very ladylike." He is very much of a gentleman. Say, "He is very gentlemanly." Quite. The adverb is often incorrectly used in the sense of very or rather. It should be employed only in the sense of wholly or entirely. These sentences are therefore incorrect. He was wounded quite severely. James was quite tired of doing nothing. How. This word is sometimes used when another would be more appropriate. "He said how he would quit farming." Use that. "Ye see how that not many wise men are called." We must read the Bible how we find it, but in modern English the sentence would be corrected by omitting how. Be careful how you offend him. If the manner of offending is the thought to be expressed, the sentence is correct, but the true meaning is doubtless better expressed by "Be careful lest you offend him." No, not. "I cannot tell whether he will come or no." "Whether he be a sinner or no, I know not." In such cases, not should be used instead of no. This much. This much can be said in his favor. Change this much to so much or thus much. That far. The expressions this far and that far, although they are very common, are, nevertheless, incorrect. Thus far or so far should be used instead. Over, more than. There were not over 30 persons present. Over is incorrect. Above has some sanction, but more than is the best, and should be used. Real good. This is one of those good-natured expressions that insinuate themselves into the speech of even cultured people. Very good is just as short and much more correct. Really good scarcely conveys the thought intended. So nice. This basket of flowers is so nice. So nice does not tell how nice, so requires a correlative to complete its meaning. Use very nice or very pretty. Pell-mell. He rushes pell-mell down the street. One bird cannot flock by itself, nor can one man rush pell-mell. It will require at least several men to produce the intermixing and confusion which the word is intended to convey. End of Slips of Speech, Chapter 7, by John H. Bechtel. Recording by Ashley Jane. Slips of Speech, Chapter 8, by John H. Bechtel. Read for the LibriVox Language Learning Collection, Volume 3. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Ashley Jane. Chapter 8. Conjunctions. As a general rule, sentences should not begin with conjunctions. And, or, and nor are often needlessly employed to introduce a sentence. The disjunctive but may sometimes be used to advantage in this position, and in animated and easy speech or writing the coordinate conjunction and may be serviceable. But these and all other conjunctions, when made to introduce sentences, should be used sparingly. Reason, because. The reason I ask you to tell the story is because you can do it better than I. Because means for the reason. This makes a sentence equivalent to the reason I ask you to tell the story is for the reason that you can do it better than I. Use that instead of because. Because William studied law is no reason why his brother should not do so. The following is better. That William studied law is no reason why his brother should not do so. Only, except, but. The house was as convenient as his, only that it was a trifle smaller. Use except for only. The field was as large as his, only the soil was less fertile. Use but for only. But except. Being the eldest of the brothers, but Philip, who was an invalid, he assumed charge of his father's estate. Except is better than but. But what? But that. Think no man so perfect but what he may err. Say, but that he may err. I could not think but what he was insane. Use but that. But if. I should not wonder but the assembly would adjourn today. Use if instead of but. But that. I have no doubt but he will serve you well. Say that he will serve you well. That. I wish to show you by your own writings that so far were you from being competent to teach others English composition that you had need yourself to study its first principles. Moondean's English. The second that is superfluous. This fault is very common with writers who use long sentences. The intervention of details between the first that and the clause which is intended to introduce causes the writer to forget that he has used the introductory word, and prompts him to repeat it unconsciously. But. There is no doubt but that he is the greatest painter of the age. The word but is superfluous. He never doubted but that he was the best fisherman on the coast. Omit but. That. He told me he would write as soon as he reached London. Say, he told me that he would write, etc. Than. The Romans loved war better than the Greeks. Such ambiguous forms should be avoided. As it is not probable that the speaker intended to say that the Romans loved war better than they loved the Greeks, he should have framed his sentence thus: The Romans loved war better than the Greeks did. But that. He suffered no inconvenience but that arising from the dust. But that, or except that, is correct. Some persons improperly use than that after no. I don't know but that I shall go to Europe. Omit that. I don't know but I shall go, etc. Other than. We suffered no other inconvenience but that arising from the dust. This is incorrect. After other we should use than. Therefore, we suffered no inconvenience than that arising from the dust. After else, other, rather, and all comparatives, the latter term of comparison should be introduced by the conjunction than. Either the. Passengers are requested not to converse with either conductor or driver. This is one of those business notices that are often more concise than correct. It implies that there are two conductors and two drivers. The sentence should read, passengers are requested not to converse with either the conductor or the driver. Lest that. I feared lest I should be left behind. Use the copulative that and not the disjunctive lest. I feared that I should be left behind. Otherwise than. He cannot do otherwise but follow your direction. Use than, not but, after otherwise. Hence, he cannot do otherwise than follow, etc. After that. After that I have attended to the business, I will call upon you. The word that is superfluous. But what? His parents will never believe but what he was enticed away by his uncle. Omit what. The use of but, that, would be equally objectionable. But is sufficient. A reconstruction of the sentence would improve it. His parents will always believe, or will never cease to believe that, etc. Doubt not but. I doubt not but your friend will return. Say, I doubt not that your friend will return. Not impossible, but. It is not impossible, but he may call today. Use that instead of but. Whether. Ginevra has not decided whether she will study history or whether she will study philosophy. As there is nothing gained in clearness or in emphasis by the repetition of whether she will, this shorter sentence would be better. Ginevra has not decided whether she will study history or philosophy. As though. He spoke as though he had a customer for his house. Say, as if he had a purchaser, etc. Except. I will not let thee go except thou bless me. This use of the word except occurs frequently in the Scriptures, but is now regarded as obsolete. The word unless should be used instead. Few speakers except Burke could have held their attention. In this sentence, besides should take the place of except. End of Slips of Speech, Chapter 8, by John H. Bechtel. Recording by Ashley Jane.